Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of By the Numbers. I'm your host, Richard Lewis. Joining me, as always does, is the esports historian. It's with a throwback jersey there. It is Duncan Thorin Shields. We've got Sam Bainlaw Davies, no relation to Warwick Davis, pressing buttons. I haven't talked to him, By the way, guys, get used to this. Me and Sam, I think we're having a bad breakup. I think we're having a divorce. I haven't talked to Sam in weeks.
Mate, we've
haven't
been
talked to you
planning
in
shows
weeks.
and then you're busy. When are you getting pissed on the weekend? It's not just me.
No, I've been drinking.
I've got him. I've got his ass. Yeah, exactly.
Ladies and gentlemen. Yeah, you've been swanning around in London, mate.
Yeah,
Living the
like
high life.
3 days a week.
See you,
So you do have that weird situation where your content has to exist in a permanent 3 weeks behind window where it's like, and here's the sick shit at the end of February that I'm up to. It's like, and I bet all the comments are like, why wasn't this released the day after? Like, they forgot.
I know.
Please, stop, please. I can't. Mercy, please.
So that's why. I mean, I'm going to say just at the start of this episode, obviously, we were going to talk about ESL Pro League, but I just go watch that Certo episode.
Yeah, exactly. We already did that.
I'm not rehashing that shit.
Yeah.
I'm not rehashing it again just for the sake of being by the numbers.
No.
Consider that basically a companion piece where Semler comes in and picks my brains, and I get to express more of an opinion than I would on my own show.
I think it has its own flavour, it has its own charm.
Yeah, no, it's good actually. It is. People are starting to like it now. I noticed there was a lot of classic anti-Semler sentiment at the start, but now people are starting to warm to it. Yeah, I know. Yeah, just part of the fucking course, isn't it?
Obviously, I almost regret now, Richard, that sadly he's not in the game. And spoiler, Semler might not even be in esports from now on. He might do content like that, but aside from that, as far as I know, he's gone. Because obviously, I've only just thought of it now, and he's already out the game. We obviously should have just called them anti-Semlites. Pretty good, isn't it? I wish I'd thought it up 2 years ago, though, Richard. Like, I've all the usage I could have been a best of by the numbers whole segment, but I've fucking blown it at the end when he's out of the game. He's already out the door, isn't he? So
idiot.
Too late now.
Yeah, you got to use the gold. You've got to use it when you can. So look, it's going to be a bit of a weird episode because I just released a story today, which might make up the bulk of the discussion, depending on how that goes. But before we even get into that, shout out obviously to our sponsors, our VPN sponsor, NordVPN. Go to nordvpn.com/RLS. Take advantage of a discount there. And obviously as well, our betting sponsor, Midnight. Go to midnight.com. You can sign up with the code RLewis. If you drop £20 in, they'll match that £20 for the purposes of betting on their site. Very happy to have them on board. You can get more in the description down there. And I avoided that thing all boomers on YouTube do, where they call the description box the doobly-doo, which is fucking grotesque. Have you never heard that? Never mind, I'm just old, aren't I? Right, anyway, we'll get the story out the way. Then we'll go to Pro League. We'll talk about some news. We'll do viewer questions, and we'll piece the fuck out. So, the story I dropped today, I said I was getting back into investigative journalism. Had a few stories kind of come out and a few opinion pieces.
You said at the beginning of this year at some point, like, don't even nominate me this year. I'm not doing anything this year. And then you've already had him out. Isn't this like your fourth major story or something for just this year alone? We're already in fucking March. So I'm
going hard in the paint for this one because, like I say, I do want the 3-peat this year. So I'm gonna basically do a whole I'm gonna get all the good stories and then do a big media tour ahead of the awards. For your consideration, all of that stuff. But I got a few others in the pipeline. I think today we'll finally. Sorry, not today. This year we'll finally get all of the NA match fixing stuff out one way or another. So that should be enough. I put a lot of work into that down the years, so it'll be good. But yeah, I thought, fuck it, why not? I'm still going to be around for one more year at least, so why not make it an award-winning year? So with that said, the Esports Integrity Commission. I've been working with my source network and published a story today at the time of recording this. Back when they did the original coaching ban, there was 37 coaches banned, as we remember, and I think 2 had it overturned on appeal, if memory serves me correct.
Yes.
There was a delay on a secondary part to that investigation, and people were like, okay, well, what's going on with that? There's been no updates until this point on the ESIC website since August. A lot of other investigations have been left in limbo. We'll talk about why that
People
might
don't
be.
know this story is why was it like 2 weeks ago now, Sticko came on, made that tweet where it was like a cryptic tweet, sort of like, it was one of those ones where it was like, now we'll finally see who's who. One of those like vague
Our
ones.
true enemy is yet to reveal
exactly.
itself.
And obviously, if people don't know, he obviously then did the interview with Richard, and basically that was like the genesis of this next round being publicized. Apparently, behind the scenes, there was another investigation going on.
Yeah, and ultimately, what it sort of correlates to, or all of this chicanery, is that ESIC are now going to finalize all of the coach bug abuse investigations, and I've reached out to people behind the scenes, and based on what we're seeing, they're gonna work to get it out ahead of the PGL major in Antwerp in May. So we're only realistically working with 5-6 weeks.
That's a bit of a squeeze, yeah.
Yeah. Well, I mean, as we'll get into it appears the bulk of it's already been done. There was just some other little additional things they had to work out. But the sanctions in the first batch could include up to 52 individuals, which seems like a shocking number. And it is a shocking number.
I mean, most people would say, Richard, this is the response I get from a lot of people, is like, I didn't even know there were that many coaches. Isn't that everyone?
Yeah. I mean, that's
you're not wrong when you're looking at some of the fucking names, right? It feels like it's everyone.
Yeah, and look, you have to understand, obviously, this encompasses not just tier 1,
yes, that's true.
but tier 2, tier 3, anyone who's in a position to employ a coach. And also, it does span back multiple years. I mean, we're talking about things that happened in 2017 in some cases.
Oh, right, yes, sure.
So, when you realize the scope of the investigation, I think that's going to sort of explain to people why it's taken so long, why it's so difficult to get an investigation like that across the line. Because here's the thing, and listen, I'm going to be critical of ESIC in this episode, and I've been pretty critical of ESIC recently. I think their snail's pace has been completely unacceptable. It's led to a number of issues within the scene where, let's say if I was one of the banned coaches, feel pretty aggrieved at watching other coaches that may or may not have been guilty of the same offense continue to have a career, get to be on that money teat for another year longer, not, get to maybe even attend a major that we've had in some instances. Who knows? So all of those things would really, really piss me off, and I'd feel genuinely aggrieved, especially if there was sort of the only discernible reason why the investigation hadn't been sort of completed was effectively like manpower or competence or whatever it was.
Yes.
And so ESIC that they've had a couple of L's that we've talked about on previous episodes where investigations have gone a little bit sideways on them, and so I think there was a little bit of cold feet in terms of fully committing to this without getting all of their ducks in the row. And what does that look like? Well, if I'm looking at demos from 2017, I need to go back, reach out to the tournament organizer. Do you have voice comms from that time? Maybe you probably don't. I need to go back and look at other additional information. VODs, obviously, a part of this investigation has to be working out, were the coaches, did they get an advantage?
Yes.
Did they
You have to be an expert on the game, basically. You can't just have a random guy look through the demo,
Exactly, and that's why, like, what Mikau did, I know it looks like very... It looks exhaustive, but obviously you have to get additional peripheral information. You have to interview people, and I don't know what that process looks like for ESIC. It might be like, as Mikau said, we'll read his tweet in a moment. It might be that they did just put down tools and literally stopped and didn't want to push this any further. But basically, the CSPPA, a rare example of a W for them. And actually, I haven't even written this part up yet. The ESIC and CSPPA meetings that they had around this issue have been pretty fruitful, according to my sources, and it looks like they may enter into some sort of formalized partnership where the CSPPA sort of facilitates investigations, which, if you remember, we said both entities, that was a no-brainer, because what is a bigger issue for players than integrity?
Yeah.
So it should have been at the forefront of the CSPPA's thinking instead of all this weird fucking shakedown agency bullshit they were doing. So anyway, to sort of rein it in and then get your thoughts, it does appear to me that what's going to come down the pipe probably isn't going to go over too well with the community, because I think we're going to have to start to wake up to the fact that we had an issue that was going on for a long time. It was never addressed, and now we're essentially going to rip a Band-Aid off. And I'll also say, in the vast majority of instances, and this is where we get into a philosophical debate, in the vast majority of instances, because I have seen a full list of something like 290 offences that have occurred, the vast majority of them are one round occurring in one game, often as the coach just loads in.
Obviously, it used to happen accidentally, because I know some people know you could
Yes.
trigger, but the whole premise is a lot of people understandably randomly experienced it. And the question then became, which if people will know, is essentially the cases that you would bring up if you were talking about Rugger, Robban, these specific people. The question goes, believe it or not, people are going to forget this. The standard that was set was people were banned if they just didn't immediately report it and leave the server. Even if you stood up and left your PC, even if you didn't move the camera, even if you gained no advantage, you were banned. So unfortunately, they have set the line so hard that, like, God forbid any of these people have done anything in that round, Richard, because they have to be banned by the same logic. As you say, this is my problem. One thing I don't want to see, and I really hate this from any kind of governing body, is you can never be seen to be like, oh yeah, I did fuck up. Oh, those punishments, they stand. But for the next set, I will be more lenient. Like, that's exactly. You've just been unfair to two sets of people there. You know what I mean? That can't be the way it is.
Totally.
We've got to have a precedent that makes sense. It's one of the reasons
why Valve. It's one of the reasons why Valve's approach to the match fixing always stuck in my craw.
Oh, agreed.
Because when I see Solo, the Russian Dota 2 player, going to majors, a millionaire, when he committed the exact same offense that the iBuyPower guys did, and Valve were going, oh, but it was the first time and we didn't know how to deal with it. No, you need to fucking make a decision in that moment what you want, what you are going to do moving forward, and you set the standard. It doesn't shift over time.
I even think, I know people will hate this because of who it is. I even think the fact that Simple is allowed to play while anyone VAC banned wasn't, I actually think that's fucked up. Just because someone else caught you with a different that's nonsense to me, mate. I get why they do it, because it wasn't VAC, but like, to me, that standard is nonsense. It's just a completely arbitrary one. You would decide, you do what Riot Games always does. You go, I'll create the problem, and then say, because of the problem I created, it can't be fixed except my way. And it's like, well, does it have to be that way? Oh, I can define that though. So it's like, well, now we're just in nonsense world, aren't we? So my main problem with the whole ESIC thing goes like this, mate. I can wind it back to the very beginning. It's like the CSPPA thing, and the reason why I think personally Scoots has just gone, I mean, he's just being radicalized to an extent I don't think anyone could have even conceived of at this point in time. He essentially just seems like he is all in on the project, and it's like, I mean, he's almost on some like, you can pry the fucking CSPPA from my hands, otherwise I'm never fucking letting it go, no matter how bad it gets, right? I don't want it to be like that, but unfortunately, we're all going to end up being Scoots at this rate, because here's what's happened, right? Do I want to go back to a world with no ESIC and TO's just, it's a Wild West, and by the way, nobody would ever have been caught for this, like maybe one person would in a high-profile case, but they definitely wouldn't have caught hundreds of these people being caught now. No, of course I wouldn't go back to that, but at the same time, my concern, I've got two. One is that thus far, ESIC hasn't lived up to what it's supposed to do, in my opinion, in a number of ways. Even just at a minimum, they've fucked the messaging up constantly, just constantly. They've got to level that part up. And then the other part is this. This is more of a philosophical debate as well, so we can put this to later if you want. But my other concern, similar to CSPPA, is if you just use the logic, well, it's better than having nothing, you can end up like CSPPA, where you will never have a really good thing because something else occupies its spot in the community, always necessitated by better than nothing. So I also worry about that a bit with ESIC, because I go the other way in it, Richard. Like, I'm like you at the beginning of this project. If the project makes sense and we do need them, why are we even pussyfooting around taking one foot in the pool? Get together millions of dollars, all the people in the community, let's raise the money, let's fund them properly, let's give them all the logistical people they need to do these cases, and let's agree this is the governing body. If it isn't, and we're going to be in some weird halfway house where this is like a sheriff that is like has jurisdiction over this town but not this town, but then this town might also listen to them for political, like, that can't be it. It has to be like the governing body, or essentially I have to ask the question I always do, which is, who the fuck are they and why are they qualified to tell anyone in esports what to do? I've never had a real answer to that, except there wasn't anyone before. We've got to start building something like, because my main problem is the Ian Smith guy. The reason he was on the media tour, he was the only front face of the company. I mean, a lot of people, I think, naively, Richard, actually think the Mihal guy's in ESIC. Like, they just think he is ESIC. Like, I don't think they're aware. He was like an ex-ESL person who, by the way, definitely still has connections, even though it's claimed he's like freelance. And dickhead flying DJ tries to pretend on Twitter like he's not in any way an employee of ESL and they wouldn't even recognize him as such. Definitely not the case, but okay. So to me, it's like, when you consider it at the moment, Ian Smith is ESIC. Like he just hasn't been able to communicate to me, like I say, the vibe of what that would be. Like to me, for example, even when they fucked up, there's like a fucking clownish element to it, dude. It's like the Australian match fixing one's the obvious one. They fucked up and they were sort of like, oops, yeah, I guess actually that guy wasn't the guy who should have been banned. It's all right though, because I've reversed it now. It's like, what are you talking about? That would be good. Remember, we have to consider this like a criminal case. What would you do if someone just, I did put you in jail for life, but it turned out that was all just bonkum. Didn't even have the evidence. See ya, you can go now. What are you talking about? That ain't acceptable. And so, unfortunately, I've got a vibe that's like, first of all, they don't seem to police themselves. Secondly, and the reason why I bring this up is because of the Australian case. Like there was a vibe there, Richard. Again, this might be due to how people have messaged it. Certainly, I assume guilty people will exaggerate. But there was a vibe like you didn't even get a chance to appeal because it was like, well, fuck you, you were guilty. But then it turned out some of the people that were trying to appeal potentially weren't guilty. I mean, I know that case is like full of fuckery where it's like, it's not really whether they were guilty, it's whether you can actually find a rule they had broken. But you get what my point. Like, it seems like these cases are being treated like black and white, but then there's so much grey area that I think you'd have to be. This is why I said the problem I have is this, mate. Essentially, you're about the only person I would trust to be an ESIC. You know what I mean?
Well, right. How much? So okay, lots going on there. So first of all, let's talk about the Australian case. I think basically that's the primary reason why they're super gun shy about all these other investigations. I think it's a massive black eye because it should have been a slam dunk, and there was a number of very cursory errors that were made. Now, also, it's got to be said, some people were guilty, but because of the hugely embarrassing nature of the fact that a few people got caught up in the crossfire, ESCA in Australia didn't even have E6 TOS on the website, and all these other little technicalities. Because of that, they just decided to give clemency to everybody, right? And listen, that should have just been a slam dunk. There were a number of really fucking stupid basic errors in that. I mean, not least of all, by the way, just checking that your partner has a fucking statement on their site saying that your code of conduct applies to all competitive matches in their purview. If it doesn't, then you could have saved yourself all of that time because it's irrelevant. Maybe interview some admins and see if they're telling players, yes, of course you can bet on games in ESEA, when, of course, obviously anyone would know that was ridiculous, but that was the standard at the time. So, they fucked up there, and I think that has triggered, from my understanding, I think it's triggered a number of changes internally at ESIC. Okay. Certainly, when I'm trying to communicate with ESIC about things like this now, I'm not going through the same channels. So,
is ESIC like 5 people? How many people are in ESIC roughly?
I mean, look, primarily it was, so when it first started, primarily it was 2. My understanding is obviously it's scaled up since then, and I think they've made a number of hires.
Do they have funding, etc.? Are there people actually paying for this now?
Well, so the funding comes if you go and look on their website again. So I don't have any particular insight into where the money is coming from, but basically, it looks to me that they make a specific they use a specific terminology, which is supporters. And if you go and look at members and supporters and their anti-corruption supporters, you will see a number of sizable betting platforms, a lot of which now operate in the esports space, obviously. So my belief would be that to be a supporter and to gain access to their databases and things like this, so you can protect the integrity around the betting on your esports platform, is that probably comes with a fee. I remember there was a number of people in Australia saying this is how fucking stupid some of those kids were. They were saying because they'd won like $10,000, that they were being shut out because they were winning big against the gambling sites, and the gambling sites fund ESIC. Yeah. And basically, what what happens there is obviously the idea that would even move the dial if you win
Oh, it's
10,
nothing,
20,
yeah, I know.
30K for a betting platform. But that was the allegation that was going around. If you remember, ESIC even released a press release about it saying we are absolutely not in cahoots. We don't collude with betting platforms. We have no interest in that. So, I mean, it looks to me that's where the money comes from. And I think that's how it works for most regulatory bodies, honestly. It just seems to be the only way you can have regulation because it has to be funded because of the specificity of the work you're trying to do and the sheer volume of warm bodies you need to put down in front of a fucking computer to even look at these things. But where's that money going to come from? It can't be completely independently funded. It has to come from somewhere. And so who better than the industry that it hypothetically, benefits? So I think that's kind of how it works with ESIC. But the problem with that obviously is we don't know how much. It's still a very early endeavor. And so, like I say, one of the biggest problems, as far as I can tell, is
just taking way too long. Like
Yeah.
that, it always comes back to that because there's the other problem. The reason these dates and that 2020 date looks really bad, Richard, is it's fucking 2022 now, guys.
I know.
Remember, people sometimes only have a 5-year pro career at the top. Like some of these people, the joke's going to be when we finish this case, if it's not done by the major, there might be a guy who's been and gone in tier 1 and cheated and might even be off in Valorant, like you'd imagine. So, like, who are we catching at this point?
I mean, at the end of the day as well, the longer you leave these things, the more stupid it gets to act on them entirely. I mean, put it this way: in the law in America, you have a statute of limitations.
Yes.
I mean, and it's like I'm watching these guys that everybody knows fixed matches in Valorant, and they're on top teams still in Valorant. In fact, they've not just played for one top team. Some of them have played for two.
Yeah.
Some of them are getting trials with their third, and it's like, guys, you've let these people have a career now.
Yeah,
So and put it this way, because I'm a merciful God, I'm all for the idea of, like, if you will come out and admit what you did and why you did it and explain it and pay some sort of smaller penalty for it, because, like, listen, the person they are now might not be the same as the snot-nosed fucking punk. Just don't know why I went 1950s, but it's like, past you is fucking future you, but future you can take charge and atone for the actions of past you and get ahead of this stuff. So, but anyway, back to ESIC. Yeah, the bottom line is they're short-staffed, and one of the principal members, I think, is now taking more of more of an advisory role, because I don't even know if he was ever meant to be on the front lines, and that's obviously Ian. I mean, look, love the guy, but there's no two ways about it. If he doesn't understand that going on a fucking YouTube channel of a guy that makes videos about how all pros are cheating in the scene, and there's like a huge, massive conspiracy, and that's the avenue he announces that the FBI are involved to 500 YouTube subscribers. If he doesn't understand the mechanism, that's what I mean. It's like, maybe in the cricket world, shit like that works. Although I find that hard to believe. But in the esports world, mate, that was always going to go viral. That was never going to be a low-key little interview. That was like a bombshell seismic announcement. And there were a number of channels, by the way, you had an obligation to go through before you even talked to that guy. And they basically, this is make or break. They probably, I don't know if they realize this, but if this investigation comes out and their findings are in any way wrong, or if they aren't in any way consistent with their bans, and they open the door to appeals from the previous people.
Already my concern is that topic.
Yeah, potentially legal damages, because if you're going to ban me for this but not him for that, you fucked my career.
I can prove that I don't have earnings as a result. They fired me because of that, and you didn't find it. I don't think they realise, like, there's the other problem that we're interfacing with now, you'll notice. It's all well and good when this is 10 years ago, and if ESL tells Simple, you were naughty, Slap on the wrist, go away. You just take it and you go away. In the modern day, we're now going to interface with the law. So that is now going to be a fucking factor here. And you better have it all fucking nailed down, ESIC, because all you need is that little gap and the lawyer will get his ass in there, mate. And the worst thing is, if one of those cases gets overturned or goes to court and ESIC ever has to pay damage, like you're saying, it won't matter that the other cases might all be nailed down and might all be totally guilty. All it takes is like the black mark to put the doubt in people's mind, and that mixed with popular people having been found guilty will be the way that it all unravels, I'm afraid. And I'm worried that then it becomes the case that everything they've ever done is in question, which obviously isn't how it should work, but there is almost that, like, that fucking vibe in like America where apparently that was a thing where if you remember, it was the plot to the fucking Christopher Nolan Insomnia movie. The idea that if it's ever found you like fabricated evidence in one case, they like throw out all your cases. That's almost the vibe of what people think should be done.
Yeah. So look, let's just get into the Mihao tweets. In response to my article, he said, as Richard Lewis stated, there were other types of coach bugs. What you have all seen so far is what I call a static view coach bug. But during my investigation, I discovered many other types of a coach bug. This was another reason why they partitioned off the investigations, ESIC. So what they did was they basically said that each bug will sort of drop it separately. Although some bugs are so rare, it doesn't even necessarily warrant that. But whatever. Anyway,
I've got a quick question. I want to ask you something beforehand. It goes like this, right? When you're talking about, right, here's the problem. Right. The naive question, essentially, Richard, is why didn't they ever tell us there was ongoing investigations? Now, part of me knows, because as a journalist, like I would never reveal anything until I drop my story, because as you know, people will start fucking with you. People will start going, what's going on? Where is it? Where is it? Like you'll have that as well. And it'll just make it harder. Essentially, you want to investigate it all and then have the world become aware. The problem is, though, I do think they're stuck in the middle, though, which is because they've already done the one case. And as we say, people have been punished. Even though I sort of know why it might be, I'm also not that comfortable with the idea like this only was found out officially now. Like the whole year or whatever since, there's been still investigations and essentially people, as you say, competing might be guilty, but we've sort of like hidden that from everyone until it came out now. I'm a bit uncomfortable with that. Where do you come down on that?
I mean, look, they set up this registry or whatever the fuck they call it on their site now, so you can see, and they did that essentially ahead of what you're talking about,
right?
Which is constant chip. Where's the investigation? What's going on? The problem is if you're not updating it on the fucking regular, you can't just set it to pending and just fucking walk away from it and then not say anything for 18 months or whatever it is, So, but yeah, I mean, look, I think what you have to. There has to be for me with all of these things. You've got to set a time frame. You have to, and I think if you reach a point where an investigation kind of like branches off and becomes something else, you need to make a decision at that point. Like, okay, what have we got here? For example, in legal cases, you don't just keep going forever, until you get you make the best case you can with the evidence you can obtain. You depose people. You only get a limited amount of time to run at people. It's why good lawyers are worth their salt. They know what questions to ask, how to get the information, what laws to use, where to look for discovery, all of this stuff. And so so they can build strong cases to prosecute people. And so these investigations, the idea that you just get as long as you want and you can just keep going and going and going, it's already going back fucking 5 years, some of this shit. You know what I mean? Like, there's even a philosophical argument to be said, if you got away with it in 2017, what relevance does it have in 2022? There will be people, by the way, when this happens, and it affects a coach they know or like, or a team they're a fan of, they'll make that argument.
They will, yeah.
So you be prepared for that. So I don't know. I just think when this investigation started, you needed to set yourself a hard out, and then if you got to that point and there was more and more and more, that was the point where you have to say, right, let's ban everyone we've got so far, set up a new investigation at this point, and continue.
Because what you're saying there is exactly, you've actually helped me formalize my problem. Essentially, if I phrased it in the most like I'm going to phrase it about only what I really care about. Here's my main problem. If I look at the timestamp, go and look, people. It was in like, what was it? It was in like October 2020 when he said that investigation. The previous one had finished, and then they began this other one in, what was it, like March of 2021 or something. That was the gist roughly of when it was. I forget the exact dates. But my problem is this. You're not going to set a date before the fucking World Championship of Counterstrike that has a double prize pool and is going to be watched by everyone. So essentially, someone might now get banned who just got to compete at a major. Sorry, if I am one of the banned coaches for the other bug, I'll go fucking mental if I find that out, mate. That can't be. That can't possibly be. Especially, by the way, if I'm like fucking Robban or someone where I got banned and I didn't even actively use the cheat. But I'm banned, and he's playing at the minute. Like, nah, you know what I mean? Like, that's an example of where, in my opinion, if you go to that time frame, say it was in March, then you had to set the majors your hard out for that particular case. Or, as you're saying, you had to do it piece by piece, right? The first most important bug that has most of the high-profile people, we'll knock that one out first because we've got to get the major done. Then we'll go to, you know, maybe something that was used by like randoms and tier 3. You know, I think you almost have to do that as well, because there's another thing in that we have a problem with in esports, and this is one thing I despise in esports. You know, when Riot Games, because they're the fucking progenitor of this, but Valve does it as well. What they want to do is treat everyone as though Simple, the best player ever of CSGO, and me, a guy playing CSGO for fun, are just both the same, and we're treated identically by the TOS and Valve. That is fucking nonsense, mate. That can't keep happening. We can't pretend like, but it wouldn't be fair if I actually expose Simple. I have to get to Thorin's ban. My ban isn't relevant to a major, mate. You know what I mean? Like, you can triage me the fuck out of there. So, like, that's a vibe. I don't know if ESIC does that, but I don't like that angle. Like, I do want you to be cynical and go for the big gogs first. And yes, at the end, I want you to get everyone in the net, but they're not as important, the minnows that can get out through the net, as it were. Like, get the fucking sharks. You got to get all the sharks first.
Yeah, totally. And again, like you said, triage off is the perfect example. You know, like if you've got why instead of sorting it by bug type, why not sort it by tier 1, tier 2, tier 3? You know, so yeah, dude, like you know, you're preaching to the choir here. Like, I mean, they made a number of errors in my opinion about how they conduct. And put it this way, you know, one of the things that, you know, I'm pretty confident if I said to them tomorrow, I will quit what I'm doing now and come and work for you and be the head of their cases and investigations. Yeah, I'm sure they would. Yes. But the you know, that's not necessarily that's not necessarily a direction I want to go in.
No, it would. That's the other problem I also have with this initiative, Richard. It's like, even if, like, the joke is, like, you're the only person I would pick to do it, but I wouldn't want you to do it, mate. Who the fuck would want to do this for the rest of their life? Like,
no,
it is the definition of a thankless task. That's why, by the way, I even say it. If they're legit, fucking pay them. Let's just get them the money, and then that way, if they fuck up, we know it wasn't because of lack of funding. At least that can never be the excuse, right?
I mean, to call it thankless, it would actually be an upgrade from what it actually is.
If anything, you get abused, because as you say, the second you drop, I don't know, let's say a Brazilian coach, you know you're just going to have your Twitter, you may as well turn off fucking notifications for the next week.
Yeah. So anyway, the next tweet in the tweet chain is explaining all the different types of bugs. And we're going to have another segue on this point. Mihao says there was a free roam coach bug. I've seen this bug. I've seen the video. I've seen coaches using it. And what you can do with this one is you can fly around the map as a coach and check what your enemies were doing. And Lewis Mira, who's over at Deserto, he wrote an article about Valence, who's obviously at EG, and how a number of instances he had coach bugs happen, including the one, which is for me, the most egregious, the free roam one. It's literally having no clip, essentially.
By the way, if people don't know, just for the sake of making it not too dry, I'll just add the obvious joke at this junction, because I'm going to do that thing where I use the historian brain to tie two details together. Remember last year, the story where Valence went on Twitter and he was like, why don't we just share demos of the script?
I know.
I wonder why can't. Was it too hard to activate this fucking bug all the time? Was it really annoying that you were just like, look, I could have had this bug on this kit. Just give me the demo already. Stop making me. The joke is you've set yourself up for that one, mate.
Here's what's really interesting, though. So that article by Mira came out on the 9th of February. It did the rounds on social media. And what was really interesting was the reaction from the community.
Because Valence is well loved, mate.
Yeah, so people...
I noticed this as well. People weren't vilifying him at all.
No, in fact, people said Lewis Mira was doing clickbait, and that this had no relevance whatsoever. Now, understand, there is video footage in that article from that time of that bug like of the worst iteration of the bug being used. Like Mihaw's even posted another video in this tweet thread where you can see like Valens is moving around. He's moving. So he's at his desk seeing it's happening and is moving around as it's happening. This is the most egregious example of cheat. There will be nothing worse than this in the original 37.
Yes.
Nothing. You understand?
So think about that for a second. The obvious example, because let's be real, by the way, it's not like, people being disappointed these people aren't justified, but the person who takes all the shit in the face 24/7 is Raging, the former Mouse Sports.
Yeah.
And I think after that he was with Mad Lions briefly, but he's now with he's with Entropic, but it's with the actual Czech team now, not the fucking Russian team, obviously. He gets not only shit from Yanko, the rest of it, as I say, it's up to them what they do with that. But the difference is, if I showed you the same video and said Raging did it, you'd all be going, good, get him bloody out the game. Yeah. But if it's Valens, who's beloved, all of a sudden catching feelings, everyone, aren't you? If you're guilty, you're guilty, my friend. I don't give a fuck if you're a nice guy or not.
And what's interesting is, like, so when approached about it, he said here.
Did he have some flippant remark or something?
No, here it is. So he said he came across the bug without knowing what it was. He stressed that no information was shared with the team and recalls being annoyed by the fact he wasn't able to spectate his players as normal. I thought it was just another glitch and one time it wouldn't go away. So I contacted the TO mid-game. The other times I would just try to restart the game as soon as possible since I needed to spectate my players and it fixed it. It was quite possible I was just waiting for it to reset, since most weird glitches in-game kind of just went away after pressing some keys, like the weird height bug where your model can see over things until you crouch or press jump. I definitely don't know how it came to be, and I didn't seek it out in any way. I hope the lack of a pattern in getting to that game state is self-explanatory of my intent. But look at the video. Well, I mean, obviously, I don't know if Sam can bring it up, but if you look at the video in that tweet, and you can see him moving around. Now, keep in mind, the other part to this is, Valens is like the fucking, what is it? Head of like data science. The idea he encounters this bug multiple times and can't figure out that it can confer an advantage, that he needs to disconnect, that he's moving around, and he's like, oh, bloody hell, if only this would just stop. Put it this way. If you believe Valens shouldn't face a ban for that, then we need to go back and revise the original 37.
Isn't he also the guy where part of what the whole hype around him is? He's supposed to be some like whiz kid from like fucking MIT or some shit.
Exactly.
Wasn't he some like super tech guy as well?
Yeah.
Here's the difference, fans. When Robban tells you he didn't know what was happening, he is a Swedish boomer who, as far as I know, is just an esports. He might not even know anything about computers. He might really just be like, why you kind of did the screen? Like, this guy, I definitely don't buy that. He's just like, what the hell? What the hell's a bug in the game? I better just wait until it goes off. Like, fuck off, dude. Come on.
Yeah. So put it this way, that article got shut down by the community. It was called clickbait. No one wanted to hear it. So by the way, by that standard, the community aren't going to support any of these bans when they come. So I mean, that's another battle to fight. Anyway, he goes on. He says there was also a third-person bug where you could watch your teammate from a third-person view and clear all angles for him if abused. You can see an example I recorded for Valve back in 2020. And like I say, you can see on that video, again, I don't know if Sam's playing these as I'm talking. He can, whatever, he doesn't have to, but you can go and look. Awesome. You can see how it basically essentially gives you peripheral vision, kind of similar to, I guess if I was comparing it to something else in another game for a frame of reference, it'd be like a map hack essentially for Dota where you get to zoom out a little bit more, and that would just give you a slight advantage in reaction time, seeing things you shouldn't be able to see from the set view.
I mean, the clearing angles example's a pretty good one. If you could just be slightly round, you can maybe see what the guy couldn't see. Yeah, that makes sense.
And then he says there's also another one you would get stuck on the bomb, and essentially you could tell if someone was defusing or faking. This one ESIC considered minor, and they didn't want to look into it, but I did it anyway. And so that one isn't going to make up part of this investigation, and it isn't anything to do with anything I saw or have reported. My understanding is that one was so rare and inconsequential that ESIC didn't want to even put it on the plate. And then the final tweet is, again, I went through every single demo that was on HLTV and reported all instances of any bug use, even single round instances to ESIC. I also reported all bugs I discovered to Valve to have them fixed immediately. I did my part in the investigation as best as I could.
And so on that last thing, though, that's the problem I have. There's a perfect example. Because again, this is why it doesn't make sense to divide by bog, Richard. Because
Yeah.
how does Robban not being at his PC and having a screen just stuck like this, static? How is that worse than someone could potentially know if you're defusing the bomb or not in a round where you might go for
Yeah.
like a defuse? What? That could be way more impactful. Like I get, yes, if you do the conceit they've done of framing it only by how big the bog is and how frequent it is, they're right. That is the least important one. But I'd need to know things like, yeah, even when they say that line there, Richard, it was very inconsequential, very rarely happened. Yeah, but what if it happened to like Zonic in an online game in like a final or something? Like, it might still be very rare, might almost never happen. But I'm now suddenly a lot more interested. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
What do you think on that? The idea of leaving it out?
I mean, I would put it this way: if you've got hundreds of instances of that bug, you can't. If it's 2 or 3,
is that what it's implied? That it's like incredibly rare.
Yeah, I mean that's my understanding.
Right.
But I mean, I would need to sit down with Mikau and.
I mean, the only thing with that one I would say is if it's happened 3 times, we can knock that one out of the park in about a week, mate.
Yeah,
also saying,
also true, also true. But the like I say, the problem is if you've got fringe cases like that and you can't prove wrongdoing, it's obviously better to err on the side of caution and not punish anybody.
Yeah, of course.
So I think with these, like I said, I don't even know what they're gonna do about the sheer volume of people who used it or had any of these bugs occur for a single round. I don't even know if you can make any sort of broad determination. And keep in mind, that makes up the bulk of the instances.
But here's the problem. Let me just update fans who haven't thought this through. A key problem with this situation is that Valve knows... I don't even know how much about ESIC. I don't know how involved they are with looking at the evidence. As far as I can tell, it's not even, it is Valve's literal business, but in the sense that they don't pay attention to the community, they know nothing about this fucking scene. My problem is this. A lot of people won't know this key detail. It was Valve who decided the major bans, though. They decided the criteria, as far as I know, right, as to how many major bans. Hence why you have those mad cases like Raging is permit forever, even though, as we just discussed, Valens used potentially a worse exploit. There's one for you. Then you have people like, isn't Gary banned for like 5 majors or something mental?
Yeah.
Which could be, by the way, the next 5 years of our lives with the rate we're going at majors right now. So you have these cases like that, right? Well, here's the problem. When you say there, maybe it was for 1 round. Well, it doesn't matter. Other people are getting banned for majors for that, mate. So this is also where I have another issue with this, which goes like this. If all of these cases come out now and they are all found to be guilty, the joke is Valve doesn't need to ban coaches. Almost every fucking coach feels like it's going to be banned for like 3 years, 2 years, 5 years. Like, it's going to be mental, because that's the part people keep forgetting about, because we didn't have any majors except 1. People keep mistaking the ESIC ban for the major ban. So there's people who've served their ESIC ban, right? And they came back to being coaches. I can't remember the names off the top of my head. You can probably think of one. Who came back and had a short ban? There was a few people.
I mean, Rugger's back now.
Technically, Hunden had served this period, hadn't he? Even he came back, right?
Yeah, I mean, I think Hunden would be. I mean, obviously, up until the secondary thing, Hunden was cleared to coach again. Yeah,
exactly. So we've already had people come back for it, but that doesn't mean the major one's different. That's separate. That's why I pointed out again. No one cares. The sad thing about esports, the reality is this, Richard. Unfortunately, morons can't understand why things hypothetically can be interesting. It's only when the reality hits them that they suddenly care. So, for example, all of a sudden, guess what? You know, when I made that video like 2 weeks ago that explained. It's not so quick, guys. Russian players might just never play Counterstrike again. And everyone goes, what are you talking about, Theron? They're all just going to become Serbian. It's all... And ESL said they can play. And then you see the news coming out now, which is like suddenly Navi might just be torn in half. It's the same shit, guys. You're not going to care until you see the names of these people and you realise, oh, shit, my coach is out for 3 majors. My coach is permit from major. It's going to... That's why I know where you're going with this, Richard. This is the problem I have. The fever pitch of the previous investigation's outcome is so high, I can see only 2 avenues. Either people double down even worse, and this just becomes a nightmare for every coach implicated, or it's even worse. They're going to go like you said, and they're not going to care this time. They're going to go, I'm spent on that story. Like, I've seen the whole story through. I even feel like I got the closure because the 37 people were banned. And people are actually just going to say, who cares? Let's just get on with CS. And I don't want that. That's almost as bad as the other one.
You know, and in retrospect, you know, I wish I'd been a bit more specific about the critique I leveled at some of the people because like I've known Casper many years.
Rugged, you
and
mean here?
yeah, Ruggy, yeah, and he's a super cool fucking dude, and like he got banned for 4 months and one major for which obviously they didn't qualify for anyway for one round,
right? Yeah.
for one round of abuse. Where, by the way, if you follow his example, his sin is non-reporting.
Yes.
Not that he used it, not that he communicated any information, exonerated of that. Because obviously it was from a tournament I think they had recordings for, right? And it wasn't even when he was at OG. So if memory serves me correct, anyway, I think that's the detail. It might not be
correct. That sounds about right.
But anyway, point being that that is a huge distinction to make. Actually,
It's enormous
When-
because
when-
that's the
when-
minimum possible case. Yeah, exactly.
He's the fringe,
Yes.
right?
If he gets banned from a major, like I say, fans understand they all have to be banned. All 50 people who don't cross over, obviously, will have to be banned from majors.
Yeah. So if that and like you say, ESIC can't walk that back now. It also makes me wonder if that's why they were reluctant to sort of go through with it.
Understandably, yeah.
Because all told, by the way, people think this 52 number is like fucking salacious and insane. Understand that it in actuality, that is just for the first part of it. So that isn't even the totality of what you could see banned. In addition to the 35, we've already got certain bans.
Oh, these are distinct cases. Like, these are 50 that weren't in the original.
As I said, on the list I saw, 290 instances of abuse
across the 50 people.
No, across more than
everyone.
50 people.
Right? Okay.
Yeah,
okay,
across everyone.
Right.
So but the way they've split the investigations up.
Ah, right. Okay.
So the first wave is 52. It
Right.
could in actuality be more. It just depends, and there probably will be some overlap. But all told, but if you include the 35 and what we could potentially have now, could be as many as 100 people. So what that does to the coaching profession and what that does to perceptions about the coaching profession. And by the way, Valve, I can't see a world where they allow coaching after this.
No way. I think it's obvious. Here's the saddest part as well. Listen, I will always be someone who believes in principles over like I find a lot of pragmatism is just cynical, and you're not necessarily required to be pragmatic. People just use that as an excuse to have shit principles. But here's the problem, Richard. I can't abide by that in the sense that I do believe coaching is a valuable thing, and I do believe there are people who did not cheat and they are going to be robbed of their ability to do it. But I have to say, on a purely practical level, I can't even turn around to Valve and go, "You idiots!" It's like at this point, the joke is it's just easier for you if you ban the fuckers. Then you never have to have any more of these cases. Yeah. It just solves the problem. It really does.
I mean, in this is the problem. It's like it's only happened essentially because CSGO is such a broken game. By the way, I mean, so understand that. So for me, Valve are completely incentivized in just killing the role as we understand it.
Absolutely.
Because
Look how many bugs it spawned already.
Yeah,
like
exactly.
5 different bugs.
What are your options? Like continually update your game as a games developer. You're mad. So no, obviously, what's easier?
Yes.
Just don't have people in that role so they can't activate all of these bugs. Or
remember, think about this, guys. The last major, they already dropped the hammer on that you can't clap, you can't mix up. This is sounding like, why wouldn't they kill it at this point? Why wouldn't they? That would be my question. I'd spin it the other way. It's almost certain they will, I feel.
And this is why we could get mired into like a real, this is all speculation. I don't have any particular insight into this, but we could get mired into some sort of insane battle over this. And I'll explain why. So let's follow it through. This investigation gets dropped before the major. There are a number of high-profile names attached to it.
Give people a gem. Here's a gem I can say, because I had this info from a few different people, so I didn't get it from one source. All you need to know is the punchline of this case, the one bright one, and don't worry, we're going to have fun with it on this episode when all the names come out, is one of the people I've heard on this list was someone who has publicly come out and dissed other coaches who used bugs. So that's going to be fucking incredible. That's going to be so rich. That's going to be the one good part that's coming out of it.
You got to love that. But so let's say, right, ban drops, high-profile names attached, and the big orgs, and then Valve come out and kill the coaching role. So me, as an org, of employing a coach that I can now no longer use to the maximum efficiency, and I have to let them go because I can't justify keeping them on salary, or I have to reduce their salary, or something like that. Coaches then get pissed off and think, why has my entire career been absolutely fucking, destroyed? Because they might be a coach that didn't cheat. So now you can see the insane potential for
That's a lawsuit.
legal wrangling, lawsuits, coaches suing fucking orgs suing ESIC. Everyone's going to appeal.
Oh, of course. Even all if you don't know, there's another problem with being a governing body, by the way. Oh, don't worry. The cunts that are totally guilty that you're banged to rights, they'll waste your time with the appeals process too. Because every more, those movies and everyone in prison, I'm innocent, it wasn't me, you know what I mean? Like, they'll all waste your time. So the amount of time logistically you just spend on that shite, going through the same case with an idiot who refuses to accept he cheated, like, oh, you're going to be wasting your time for years on that. Absolutely.
Yeah. And that's going to bleed into all the other investigations, and then ESIC are going to be slow again, and that's going to wreck there. So it's a fucking mess. It's a whole mess because we're trying to fix a backlog of 5 years of bullshit, and we're trying to do it in one quick fire rapid move, and it's just it's massively impractical. So I don't know. For me, when this does drop, and like I've seen the list, I've seen some of the names.
Something else I've realised as well, and this is just reality again. I don't agree, but I think this is the way esports industry people would say it. You remember at the end of 2020 when Blast had the incident with Vitality, where they were stream sniping. It was right on the heels of Flashpoint with MIBR, where we dealt with them and we made the 10K fine, and then Blast did something similar.
Yeah.
Right? If you remember, the vibe at the time was, even that HLTV PR guy was saying, it was like, look, you can't enforce it and everyone's doing it, so just might as well let them do it. The joke is, I actually genuinely think, Richard, if people had known at the beginning of the first case that almost everyone did it, they would agree to bury it.
Yeah.
Because it's actually bad for the scene. Like, all the TOs now look like idiots. They've just been fucking interviewing all these guys for years. They've been using all these orgs. Like, if people knew it's everyone, most people probably would say, let's just agree, moratorium, you all did it, don't ever fucking do it again, or it's lifetime ban, or some shit like that, Valve style in it, and then you just go forwards,
there was
amnesty, as it were.
There was a conspiracy theory kind of circulating that the reason, and I talked about it in that interview I did with Steeko, the reason that none of this had come out is that ESIC were afraid of destroying the scene. Or it definitely nothing to do with that. I don't think they really give a fuck. I know in the past they'd erred on the side of caution because they didn't want to ban all of the teams at Blast. But what you have to understand there is Blast completely fucked ESIC over because, again, as we know, you shouldn't ever have an entourage of people in your room staring at TVs with their mobile phones out, just centimeters away from people who are literally playing in a competitive match. But Blast allow that. It's in their rules.
Yes.
Orgs have checked, and Blast go, yeah, that's fine. And so basically, ESIC going, look, this is against integrity. And Blast going, yeah, but we sort of okayed it. So it's like, it's just esports, dude. Forget it, Jake. It's Chinatown. It's a fucking joke.
That's going to be the conclusion in it at the end.
No, that's it, mate. Well, it's all Chinatown. What you going to do? So, it's... like I said, when the names drop, I've seen the entire list. People are going to lose their shit.
Wild.
People are going to lose their shit, and there's no way ESIC can sort of negotiate these waters in a way that everyone's going to like.
Oh, the emotion's going to be crazy, of course.
Many parties are going to be deeply unhappy with this outcome. And it's going to be interesting to see where the community channels that collective anger. Will it be ESIC? Could it be me, Cal? Will it be me? Will it be me? Will it be the coaches? Who knows? Watch this space. It's like it's going to be wild. So that's that story. And I guess let me see. What did I want to move on to next? I had some nice little sort of linear progression. Oh yeah, that was it. The esports Iron Curtain. There you go.
Oh, there you go. By the way, Tell you what, I don't always hit that fucking analogy like a motherfucker. I don't think people
Oh,
realize.
I'm stealing it from you, mate.
It's good, isn't it? Like,
I'm literally again. I'm working on
you
an
should
article
do. It's
about
the obvious one.
Well,
Yeah.
I'll tell you what I've started doing, because I'm trying to get some balance to the palette, and this will be a good little thing to talk about now, because the way everything's being coloured is that that there are no sort of like there's no negatives affecting Russian people right now.
Yes.
It's really weird, the framing of it. And look, I understand. Said this many times. What's happening in Ukraine is terrible, but when you start interchanging anti-Putin sentiment to anti-Russian people sentiment, people don't understand. It's very easy for us to sit here in the West and say, why didn't you just protest? So what I've been doing is I've been trying to reach out to people that work in esports from the Russian side of things, the anti-war Russians that are being essentially penalized as a direct result of all of these things. And mate, I am going. When I get this
I bet you've got
story,
some amazing shit. I've heard some of the stuff going on, mate. It's terrible.
so just so people know, these are things that I can say that's going on. There is a collective of people who are very well positioned within the CIS region esports. And what they're doing is they're running like some mad McCarthyist.
That's exactly the analogy I would use. Yes.
Yeah. They're running like some
The
mad.
vibe is you must completely denounce and call everyone else out, otherwise
Yeah.
you're like tarred and feathered with the same brush.
Yeah, and what they're doing is they are literally creating lists of people who work in CIS esports, and they are essentially going to them saying, if you do not denounce Putin publicly, we will blacklist you from ever working in the esports industry ever again.
I don't know if people noticed this, but even in the HLTV thing where they have some information from the Navi CEO guy about trying to get his players, dude, they even softly imply in that. There's almost like a gist if you read a certain sentence. That's almost like, and anyone who doesn't need to be paid in Russia and like doesn't support the regime, which is like, whoa, why is that part in there? What? Why would that even be a question? But that's the point. Like that's, by the way, that's a team where that's their own players that they're dealing with. So yeah, basically people don't know it, but there's this like sentiment bubbling under, and as you say, people behind the scenes definitely are already taking action on it. And in this scenario, yeah, basically if people don't know, this isn't America. Like the real joke is this, and I've said it a million times. The real reason why Donald Trump never was the new Hitler / a dictator / killing the press is because you could go on television and go, fuck Donald Trump. You would be applauded, leave the room, never face any real world reprisals.
Here's a book deal, here's a comedy special.
I'm sure some people are sending you a mean tweet. You would never go to prison, you would never be killed by a militia, and you would never in any context actually face like real Meanwhile, as I'm sure you're about to explain, it is a different fucking world for the people they're making these demands of. Essentially, the joke is everyone in the West is so hollowed out and corrupt that we just virtue signal for anything on our screen each week. They think you can do that, and other countries do. They think you could be in China and just pop out a bunch of anti-Tencent and fucking CCCP shit and just go, I'm just getting my opinions out there. It's like, nah, this is what you never do, by the way. And I hope this is the lesson everyone learned over the last 3 years. Never ask an action of someone else that they carry all the consequences for and you carry none, because that's actually immoral. You're not in a position to tell that person what to do with their life. What happens, by the way, if they say something and they get murdered the next day? Do you just go, lol, guess Putin's fault? No, you'd be partially to blame for that. You tried to incite them to do it.
As part of this article, I'm researching Russian law, and it's it's a weird time to be doing that because they brought in a bunch of stuff specifically.
There was a lot of stuff to target protesting, if people don't know.
But just so people know, this is the type of stuff you're asking of these people. So there was sanctions brought in against the media, where basically if anyone disseminates non-official state sources or sources not approved by the state as in your capacity as a journalist, you can face up to 5 years in prison. If you attend a protest,
and their prisons aren't like the UK prisons, I'll tell you fucking right now, mate.
Yeah, you're not getting not getting a nice pair of slippers
exactly.
on the way. Put it that way. Which, by the way, yeah, prison issue slippers. Look them up. So if you attend a rally that isn't approved of by the government, pre-agreed, 15 days.
Could also get your head smashed in by a fucking riot.
15 days, well. And by the way, you're on a list on the state, because let's not pretend it's not a police state. It's actively a police state. Look with your eyes. You've seen the videos. And then on top of this, by the way, a new thing, if you assist the Ukrainian, if you assist the Ukrainian people in any way,
Doesn't give money.
that can be deemed by the state. You could face up to 20 years in prison for treason. That is a thing now.
Yeah.
So, and there's others, and it's like, listen. Obviously, solidarity with the people who were being fucking invaded and, having terrible things done to them. Ukraine didn't invite this upon themselves. I don't want to get into the meta geopolitical stuff of like, but did they by causing up to America?
I mean, put it this way, the people who were getting killed definitely didn't. Like the civilians obviously had nothing to do with this. Again, in the same scenario as the Russian example.
Everyone is fucking oil for the machine of geopolitics at the end of the day. But What's going on now? We're reaching a point in esports where it's like me and Duncan said at the start. You didn't necessarily need to come out and formalize your sanctions against players and all this other stuff because the geopolitical situation was going to take care of itself. Yes. Those players were not going to be allowed to travel. Those players were not going to get visas. And it's kind of interesting.
But it has become a witch hunt. I'm with you on that angle, mate. It's disturbing. And I've
it's getting really crazy.
I've heard a few of these stories, but mate, I'm also so disturbed because I've noticed there's a very clear distinction, right? The people who are publicly disseminating the same vibe, by the way, you'll notice they're all really influential CIS people who don't play as active pro players. Have you noticed that? That's exactly the line that divides them all. They're industry people, so they've got the power and the connections to do this and a platform to say it from, but they're never going to have to be a guy who's actually going to have to go and shake the hand of a player that they've just essentially asked to commit suicide via fucking government. So, that's a really... Because here's what people don't get, is if anyone's followed my work for my entire 20-year career, you would understand I hate unfairness. I hate when one set of principles is applied to one set of people, purely arbitrary, not because they have a different context, and then you apply it to someone different, especially along the friend-enemy barrier. You'll notice I try to be fair even to people I consider my enemies, people who I do not like, even if they do good work, I will still say they do good work. Unfortunately, though, so as a result, by the way, it's the whole reason why I had to have literally 6 or 7 years now of dickheads telling me I am a Donald Trump supporter. Go look up any tweet I ever made about Trump. It was always either a joke, just like lol, something about Trump or something, or it would just be showing that the media actively lied about him. Go and look into it. They did lie in the case of that. That's about journalism, you dickhead. My main interest as my profession for 20 years. But I can't talk about it because I'm from the UK and that must mean I like Trump. By the way, have you never ever seen A Man for All Seasons? If you wouldn't give the devil his due in this regard, you have no business judging people. You are corrupt by definition. The whole premise is supposed to be that even the worst criminal still gets the fucking due process. He still gets the law applied. You don't just go, well, he's evil, chop his head off. That isn't the way we do things now, guys. We've gone past that in theory.
Yeah, in theory.
In theory.
Yeah. So anyway, why am I talking about this? So 2 stories. The first is in an article in the Washington Post. The CEO of Navi made a number of statements, which, by the way, tie into what I'm already being told and fed to from my CIS contacts. And that is that, now there is, look, we knew there was going to be an ramification. This, what we're witnessing is something that defines the next 30 years of history. Not just esports.
People don't get it, do they? This is the big moment. This is it.
Yeah. No, we are literally living. You've been told, by the way, every moment in American politics or something is like some defining moment in history.
Of course.
It's not. It's ephemeral. It's garbage. It's bullshit. It's which fucking elderly moron do we elect? And is it Red's turn or Blue's turn to fucking defraud and steal from the public? That's all it is. It's not important. It's only relevant in a cultural way to you because America's going to drop bombs on some of you. It's going to come for your loot. That's it. That's America. That's American imperialism. But if you look at their foreign policy over the past 50, it's pretty much all in lockstep, isn't it? It doesn't really change a great deal, does it? But this is radically different. This is history. It's going to radically shift even the way we think of borders of nations. I don't know if you've seen, but for now, the Russian sports, they're now applying to join the Asian federations and things like football.
Makes sense, yeah.
Because, obviously all the European sanctions is going to essentially freeze them out of competition. Yes. So, there've been a number of teams historically for various reasons that have changed federation. But that itself is a huge shift, not to mention the fact that when Duncan talks about an Iron Curtain, I know Zoomers won't know what that is, but it was obviously back when we had the USSR, there was it wasn't just a metaphorical barrier. It wasn't just a cultural barrier. It was a literal barrier. It was this impenetrable thing that you couldn't just travel to Russia. You couldn't just go to Russia. You couldn't go to any of the former communist states. You just couldn't go there. And it was territory that sprawled across Europe. It occupied this, not just a huge physical landmass, but even countries you wouldn't think of. Like, you don't know what East Germany is, right? You're a Zoomer. You don't know about that. You weren't there. You didn't see the fall of the Berlin Wall on your tellies like me and Duncan did. So what's happening now is we're moving back to that state. In the profound impact that it's going to have historically on the way we do business, the way we travel, who can and can't travel, sports, geopolitics, alliances, China's position as a global leader. It all changes now, and we can't go back. Even if we get to a point where Putin dies while he's in power, and somehow the next guy comes in, is more in line with either a Gorbachev in that he's more open to Western relations, or he's like a Brezhnev, like he's just some fucked up Richard III gimp who fucking, who's comically inept, and Russia falls massively behind. You don't know what you're going to get in Russia. I couldn't even tell you, by the way, who would be poised to take over Putin should Putin pass away. So, and when that would be. But you can't just walk all of this back. It's not going to get walked back for a long time. I'll probably be dead before.
I think so as well.
Yeah,
I was telling people, if people don't know, I went to Russia this year, at the very beginning of this year. My assumption is I will never ever be able to go there in my life again. Like, that was just it. I was lucky I went now, because it's just fucking over, isn't it? The joke is I'm going to be telling people in 20 years what it was like to go to Russia before. That's going to be the story.
And I don't think that's any exaggeration.
No, I don't think so.
And as a result of that, obviously, we're downstream from culture. And so what ends up happening is that's now bleeding into what we do. And so you had this interview with an RV CEO where he basically said, moving forward on his roster, they will no longer work with Russian-based players. They will no longer work with Russian-based players.
That's what I was referring to. Yeah.
So, what literally he said, he will help relocate Russian players who don't share the Russian government's politics.
That was the line that I found really dodgy, mate. Because again, it's not just shut your fucking mouth and play CS. It's like, you notice he didn't say there, Richard. He didn't say who I've expressed support for the regime. He said that you don't share their views. This is thought police shit.
Well, actually, no. The line he drew is that if you live in Russia and pay taxes to the Russian Federation, you're off the table as ever being able to represent Navi ever again. Okay. So put it this way, like that to me, I don't know, mate, where I'm at with that. Because it's like, on the one hand, yes, I suppose technically you are showing fealty to your government if you pay taxes. But that's like saying I'm fucking like that with fucking Bojo, and we're quaffing champagne just because I do what I'm legally obliged to do. It's like saying,
because the UK did, as far as I know, are you ready, Americans? You're going to love this term. You're all spamming it. As far as I know, an illegal international war against Iraq. Guess what? That's like saying that Richard is to blame for that because he paid his taxes.
I mean, to
me, the connection's non-existent. And here's the part.
I was politically active back then. I actively marched and rallied about that, and I wrote loads of articles saying how it was all bullshit.
But this is the problem. In this standard, though, it wouldn't matter, Richard. You pay your taxes. If you pay taxes, you're fucked. Because here's my problem, and I made this point in my video where I pointed out it might not be as simple. By the way, if you haven't guessed it, Electronic was obviously the player I was even using as my example. He is a new father who is Russian. As far as I know, his wife is Russian, and they live in Russia, right? Not only are you maybe not going to want to move your whole young family outside of Russia, and by the way, this is where also people haven't thought about the world we're going into, Richard. Basically, there are going to also be other countries where when you move out of that country, you're now the second-class citizen, and your child is now going to face fucking harassment from people, negative sentiment, people blaming them for this shit. And then final detail, think about this. think about it, fans. It's only a bloody video game. Not only would I personally, Richard, not move my young child to a foreign country so I could play video games, which, by the way, if I'm shit at in 2 years, my whole career is done. But if I do that, they don't ever get to meet their fucking grandparents. They don't get to have any life back home with fans, family, school. Their whole life is done. What? Because I like CSGO. So this is where I don't think people realise there are going to be hard decisions made on all sides, the player side, the org side, family side, and there's no way all the outcomes are going to be what we want. I don't even know if they can be, because as I say, like, can I selfishly say to Electronic, I love watching you shoot people on nuke with an AK in the head. So just get your whole family, mate, and just fucking ship off out and never go back to Russia. Again, there's a detail people don't think about, Richard.
No, you might not be able to go back.
What if there's a world where, as I said, the difference between the Iron Curtain was this, guys? That was to keep you in the USSR. It was set up by the USSR. They didn't want you defecting. Now it might be a world where if you leave, you're not welcome back. They've almost implied that, by the way, Richard. That was even implied within Russia, I believe, that if you left in that way, and for example, like, if people don't know, here's a quick side detail. You know where they put the sanctions on the oligarchs, and they thought naively all the Russian people would be like, lol, this is fucked up. Like, this is going to hurt Putin. Something like the joke was Russian people hate oligarchs. They just thought, like, lol, good, fuck them. They had their money in other countries anyway. Why wasn't it in Russia? It should have been with us. So the premise is, like, essentially, you're going to, if you're people like Electronic, you are just being squeezed from both sides to oblivion. You can't survive this, mate. You're going to have to pick a side, unfortunately. You can't stay in the middle. They're not going to let you.
The idea as well, imagine thinking, if you know anything about Russian history, by the way, that if you imagine thinking the Russian people, like, love oligarchs.
I know, it's metal in it. It's so stupid. The joke there, by the way, if you even know the
so ridiculous.
There's a famous saying in Eastern Europe that goes like this, Richard, right? If something bad happens to me, the joke goes, well, as long as the neighbour's sheep dies as well. That's their mentality. It's a pessimist mentality, but it's essentially like, if it's going to be shit, let it be shit for all of us. So what people don't get is this. Even the guy who will be affected by the sanctions is like, yeah, but at least fucking, you know, like, I guess, at least Abramovich, at least he's getting fucking wrecked too. That's like that guy's mentality.
Yeah.
It's not even achieving the ends at the moment you hope it would.
So, I mean, look, it's bleeding into esports now in a way that, for me, is, you know, we're getting to a threshold.
I'm feeling uncomfortable about this.
Yeah.
It's getting horrible.
And what I'm worried
I wanted
about,
this to be the opposite, dude. Remember that speech from Simple?
That's what I was going to say. Yeah.
I hoped Na'Vi were going to be the opposite. They were going to be the ones who tried to show that, look, literally, Simple as Ukrainian, Electronic is Russian. They don't have a problem. They're going to compete together. As long as you don't actively say, I think it's good they are having a war in Ukraine, and you're Electronic, then you're okay with us, mate. That's all we ask of you. In fact, Russians, that's all we ask of any of you, and we hope that your country stops it. Instead, as you say, we're edging closer and closer and closer, by the way, to a point which, if you know historically, there is no return from. That never gets walked back in a really cool way where everyone makes it up. Like, that's also the sort of divide that goes. In fact, I've even given the analogy earlier. I've told you this story before on this broadcast, right? That when me and Yanko went to an event in Croatia, remember, guys, Yanko would have been something mental like 6 or 7 years old when that war was going on. When we went to an event in Croatia, people from the crowd who were 13 years old and could not have been alive when the Yugoslav conflict took place were shouting to Yanko in Croatian, very similar language to Serbian, that he is a pussy and trying to antagonize him. That's a generation later. What do you think's going to happen with, like, the kids of people who grow up and then their parents are like, everyone from that country is against us, son, and they're the ones all doing it to us. That goes a very dark place, guys. We already have got people trying to take care of the Ukrainian side. The point is, it doesn't mean just because it's worse that Ukrainian people are dying, that Russian people can be fucked over and can be targeted and can have like biases against. That's fucked up too, on a different scale, but that is fucked up too, and I can't stand for that either.
Well, yeah, and it's like I say, it's the fact now that it's like people are actively going out of their way to kind of, you know, they want to penalize people. Not everyone has the luxury of a platform where they can even feel secure speaking up, and yet you are going to be penalized in some way for that. But more on that story to follow. And then obviously there was this news. We've got the Intel Extreme Masters Dallas coming up. And according to...
In bloody America, of all fucking places to need a visa for, guys.
I know.
America!
Exactly.
That was the one where, like, it used to be potluck that all the Russians made it through anyway. There used to always be one guy got turned down. And it's America. Me and Richard can't even get our bloody visas first time.
I know.
We're not even from a Russian-speaking country.
Yeah. So I mean, like the detail here is it came from, I believe it was Overdrive, who's like
Good old
this, you know,
Overdrive.
yeah, this Russian insider. But basically, was followed up in a report over on eScore News, and apparently that there's going to be a number. All the Russian players essentially can't get American visas.
Yes.
So, and that was one of the first sanctions. Because I mean, like as Duncan just told you, they don't give them visas up anymore. It's not like the good old days where if you had a British accent and you could fucking hey, look, I'm a journalist. Oh, no problem. Here's a visa. Have at it. None of that shit. Like it doesn't matter where you're from now. They hold on to those things like the fucking crown jewels. And obviously they were the first thing to go as part of these sanctions. So the problem is you need a visa to compete if you're doing everything in complete propriety. So who's going to be affected at IEM Dallas? Well, first of all, obviously Gambit,
Entire team almost except Hobbit,
entire
right?
team obviously out. Entropic, you'll notice as well, and this is what we were saying, Entropic were not included in other people's statements or bans because they are a Czech Republic owned organization, and even though they have Russian players, that was a distinction that we made. There will be no such distinctions in the world of geopolitics.
It wasn't as simple as just Gambit and VP. You idiots don't know. It's like I said, dude, it's going to end up being fucking electronic. And wow, is everyone really going to be laughing then when we never get to see Na'Vi complete the era? We never get to see them defend the title at the major. Like, it's going to be fucking brutal. And yes, one day people will stop being killed, and then this will then become a topic again, which suddenly seems the most important of the day. It's just that for now it doesn't seem as important, but it will be in the future. Yeah,
well, like you said, it's the key thing is nothing that gets done now gets walked back. I say not in mine and Duncan's lifetime.
And then certainly not while certainly G2.
Yes, Monacy, Jim, obviously Flit, VP affected as well. So essentially, you've got
just like torn the ingredients list in half for the fucking teams, it feels like, doesn't it?
Yeah. And here's the other thing, Duncan. Now, I've already been told behind the scenes, and this is another aspect of it, where you're going to have not a figurative iron curtain, but a literal one. There are a number of people who have Russian players that are now they're essentially, this is the deadline. You're going to have to get dual nationality. By the way, there's not even a guarantee that dual nationality will save you.
There's another thing. You know what all the internet geniuses did, Richard? They did the thing that all fucking know-alls do, a 5-minute Google search. So what they told me was, no, but Thorin, you're wrong. Russia allows dual nationality for now. For now. Mm-hmm. Did we just tell you that we're in a world? Essentially, by the way, the simple way to describe what Rich was talking about earlier is, you don't know this, but you did live under an empire. It's called the American Global Empire, and you were in a unipolar world while you grew up. So you don't know this, but you think this is the way history was. It wasn't. This was a very anomalous blip in history. What we're going towards now is a multipolar world where China maybe is going to be the one that's in position, but then maybe USA has its own world. Maybe Russia is allied with China, but in their own world. Like, essentially, we're dividing the world up again. It's the age of empires. It really is.
Yeah, and so the issue...
Because my worry is that Putin just goes, if you're all going to get nationalities, then that's all you are now. Take away his Russian passport.
Not only that, though. What if the country you're traveling to doesn't even make that distinction? Right. Why would it? So
if you have any Russian
ties,
no matter what, right?
My read is that's probably where we get.
I could see that, yeah. Especially think about the European countries, dude, like Germany, the ones that publicly want to take a stand against it. That's the easiest virtue signal ever. We just won't let them in.
Yeah. So you've got that, but the basically my sources are telling me now there are basically a number of orgs are saying it's just not worth having Russian players on the books, and it's not going to be for the foreseeable future. So no non-Russian organization is going to pick up Russian players. So you might be essentially looking at this Gambit team just being, they might have to compete almost exclusively within Russia. Gambit might, there were a number of reports come out earlier in the week.
I assume they have to make their own team, mate. That was my first assumption as well. You have to make your own tournaments.
Gambit are like, sorry guys, what's the fucking point to any of this? So they could be on the scrap heap. That team gone. And obviously, if you're an org outside of Russia and you're like, well, Whew, we dodged those sanctions. You're not dodging the real sanctions.
Yeah.
You might dodge the esports one because we want to make a distinction of some kind. Your players will not be able to go into the countries these tournaments are in. And so it might be fine for the ones that will allow it, but where's that going to be? A Dubai,
Wasn't it already implied that Belgium, which unfortunately is the next major, wasn't it implied that Belgium themselves were doing something like shutting out
I
Russians
don't
and
even
stuff?
know where we're at with this because, like, Belgium were one of the first countries to make a public statement where the person who was the head of immigration in Belgium was quoted as saying, for now, Russians are not welcome here. Didn't say Russians who support the war.
Yes.
Didn't say pro. He said all. I mean, it's outrageous inflammatory rhetoric. Which, by the way, it's weird how the political standard shifts, isn't it?
Imagine if Trump had ever said anything like that.
Yeah,
Remember, Richard, there was a case where people said he banned all Muslims. You remember that one, which wasn't at all the case, but same exact scenario, basically.
Yeah. So at the end of the day, the issue we've got now is we've got a major that's like fucking 6 weeks away, and we don't even know if the teams that are qualifying are going to be able to compete. We don't even know if there's any point in having the RMR. There's been no official communication from Valve about what branding you'll need to use or whatever. If you're at the RMR, do I need to remove, if I'm Virtus Pro, do I need to remove that? If I'm Gambit, do I need to remove that? What? And this is the thing. It's like we've lurched out of a pandemic when nobody could fucking keep up with what countries were doing what and lockdowns, and there's been an outbreak of fucking Omicron per CI8, so now we're back in lockdown. You can't travel here. In this country you can't travel to, but this one you can, even though that country doesn't have cases, but this one does. So you were already like plate spinning to try and keep up with all this shit, and now, I mean, so let's say there's peace in Ukraine tomorrow. Peace talks are touted and slated at the time of recording this, right? So let's say we get to a ceasefire, we get to peace, we get to some sort of resolution. Are immigration laws just getting rolled back on that same day? I don't think anybody realizes that. No. I believe changes that are being made now are going to be in place for some time to come, and also not to mention whether they're officially codified or not. Remember, it is all discretionary. All immigration law is discretionary. It's essentially somebody looking at your case and saying,
there are some really famous cases, because you'll know these just from the media. Like the classic one is there was a very famous one where a couple from the UK were going like LA, and while they were on the plane, they tweeted something like about to blow up LA, but they obviously meant like, have a great time. And when they landed, they were just sent back home. They were told, you're not welcome, get the fuck out. Obviously, it was in the wake. It wasn't literally after 9/11, but that was the pretext used. Yeah, essentially, it's up, as you say, it is literally their discretion. If people don't know, it's why you never be impolite to the fucking people at those borders. Like, you might think, I have a right to come. Mate, you're going to have a really bad time if you take that action with that guy. I'm telling you.
So, anyway, so it looks like it's going to impact on the. I mean, look.
It'll just make the next major absurd. Think about this premise. How can the major take place without the 5 players that won it? And it's not that they didn't qualify. They weren't allowed to even go there. I know that that's not Valve's fault. I know all these things were decided beforehand. But that is on its surface absurd.
Yeah. Well, if, as I say, if Navi have all their ducks in a row, and all the players do want to relocate. I just don't even understand how you get all this done in 6 weeks, by the way. This
feels impossible, mate. Getting nationalities. Like, remember, we aren't just talking about go to the country. We're now talking about getting like a passport from that country. Like, look, I know not every country is like the UK. Like, I've heard in the Netherlands, by the way, it'll trigger the fuck out you. Years and years ago, I used to have a teammate on like a little team back in the day that played. And he had never come to the UK before. He goes, I'll come over for a trip. And I was like, all right. And he goes, I just have to get my passport. And I was like, well, you're not coming then. He goes, what are you on about? I'll just go tomorrow and pick it up. It's like, what? And then apparently in their country you could just go and like get it done in a day. In the UK it takes like a week, and I can imagine certain countries, like if you're a foreigner doing it, remember they're gonna have to check all the details. You're gonna have to go back in your fucking arse, look through all, are you telling the truth? Are you check on records from your country? By the way, who even knows what happens with that, Richard? Like, what if there's some component that in theory in the past would have involved them contacting Russian authorities? Good luck with that. You know what I mean? Like, I don't see there's any way this gets resolved. The major's in May, isn't it? In May? Am I wrong on that?
May.
There's no way. Like, come on, guys. That's 2 months ago. That's less than 2 months. Basically a month away. Let's be real. In a month, they have to have this all done.
So I really don't know. And honestly, like, this is something where, again, like, some entity has to get front and center on this. I don't know if it's a CSPPA or whatever, but like, we all gotta get around the table and
I
figure
agree.
out what we're doing.
We can't wait
moving
till last
forward.
minute. We can't.
No,
Like,
we
think
can't.
about this. Here's another
This
world.
isn't going away, guys.
Imagine Imagine Valve never even gets informed of what we just said. All the very tight logistics, right? Here's an obvious thing I can see happening right now, Richard. One Na'Vi player can't go. Therefore, by the major rules, Blade now has to play it. Now the whole tournament is an actual joke. Now you look even stupider because you didn't even give the people, like in this scenario, I actually think genuinely there should immediately be a dispensation to potentially have like an extra sub or something in this case. You know, it's not like you're using it to cheat. This is a very serious scenario where it might actually ruin the tournament. They might have like half the top 10 chopped out.
Yeah, it's not a bad shout. I mean, because look, there's absolutely no way. There's just no way. I mean, even if some players from Russia get dispensation, even if Belgium decide to relax things that, like you say, you cannot get a more, like, a stronger thing to say than Russians are not welcome here. You cannot, like, it's, you know. So I don't know when or how that gets, but let's say if that's just like some stupid politician, you know, just publicly talking out of school, and in actuality it's not going to be that hard line. Some Russian players will still get caught up in this.
I agree.
And so you're going to have alternatives. You're going to have options. I mean, for an org like Gambit, if we're saying because they're Russian owned, you know, they can't compete at, you know, ESL competitions under their name, surely then the logical conclusion is they forfeited their right to enter a team into the major, and we just have to say, you're not coming, and we find a replacement team. That's the logical progress, right? So, you know, and by the way, grotesquely unfair on those players, but it fixes the problem, and it makes us logically consistent with everything that's gone before. So guys, we just never learn lessons in CS. This is like, we are staring at a mammoth undertaking. We are staring at global shifts that are going to have a seismic impact on our industry, and people are just sat there going, well, maybe it'll be okay in a week. It's never going to be okay in a week. We live in end times or something. It's fucking mental what we've all gone through the past 3 years, and we're trying to hold this stupid little fucking industry, a patchwork of corrupt liars and thieves together because we realize Zoomers like to see people play video games. Don't you realize how absurd it is on its face that not one person can sort of take point and actually be like a fucking leader and make some determinations and get ahead of problems before they fucking... It's like... We never learn. We never learn, and we never improve.
The part that really like fucking just grates on my soul is the thing I complained about a few episodes back, where, like, as we said, based on the travel and the visa shit, you never had to ban these fucking orgs from competing or invite them. They were never going to be allowed to compete. You could even have used that as like, look, we appreciated, like, Gambit, by the way, was a very important team for fucking ESL and Blast. They were like winning their tournaments. Like, you could even be like, it's a shame that it had to be this way, but obviously our hands are tied. No, instead what you did, and this is the ultimate indictment of the world we live in, is even over actual war/conflict scenarios where people are dying, you virtue signaled for internet like and clout. What it means is this, guys, there is no bottom to the barrel. These motherfuckers will virtue signal over anything. There's nothing sacred. It's so fucked, isn't it?
Yeah, I know. So we move on to cheerier topics, but we will follow up on that story somewhere down the line. We got some big roster moves that were confirmed in the past week or so. So let's start. Obviously, the NBK one sort of came out of fucking left field. I think he played 25 maps in total.
Wasn't very much, yeah, exactly.
And basically got Thanos out of existence. And so, yes, NBK was dropped from Mouse. JDC, their academy plays, done very well, by the way. He come in and replaced NBK. And NBK sort of publicly tweeted saying he was very confused. It felt to him rushed. It was sort of handled over a 24-hour period, he said, where he went from fucking everything was fine to you're out of the team. He's left scratching his head. And then there was a follow-up statement because people got to speculating, which, spoiler, by the way, anytime you make a roster move, if people go, it's completely unfair to speculate. shut the fuck up.
I know.
That's all.
I've never met anyone who could maintain that standard themselves.
No, exactly. Yeah, that's like the NATO suffix world.
Because the same person, the joke is, I'll even use that example, the same NATO suffix who'd sort of be like, but you haven't been in a team, so why can you speculate? Next tweet would be like, Chelsea should really fucking bench this guy. What's he doing? It's like, oh, fuck, what are you doing? That's you. That's
I don't think Alexi B is that good in IGL. All right, well, fair enough, mate. So, anyway, he then followed it up and said, look, I've had no negative feedback and I've been a good teammate, and there's been no problems communicated to me. And what was really interesting was as well is that the Mouse Sports Reddit account, obviously they've rebranded since then, was in the thread about it saying, no, but NBK has been nothing but a great teammate. And it's like, guys, the way you put the statement out was like in your wording, it was almost, there was like an implication, like a fucking subtext.
Because he didn't give a good reason. That's the main problem, right? It's like he's just boozed it, you say, after like 2 months or something. No reason given, and we're putting the academy player in. But why would anyone read anything into that? He's only the most decorated player in the history of French Counterstrike. Why would anyone read into that? It's like you begged them to fucking speculate.
I know. So yeah, it was just really weird how that was sort of all handled. And like, I don't know how you feel about it, but to me it just feels like just mega like premature, like to and I didn't think Mouse looked that bad.
Do you want my little rant? I've got a little rant on this one.
Yeah,
I could have done a video of this, but it's probably not long enough for it. So it goes like this, right? There's 3 levels I want to take this on, and they go like this. 1 is about NBK the person, because sadly that became an important part of this story. 2 is about NBK the player, so should he have been removed or not? Was that fair? And then 3 is about the conditions in which you recruit people to your team. So we'll handle these all in a row. Number 1, that where NBK fucked up, and this is where, even though actually I will say, I won't speak out of school, but essentially NBK asked a little bit of my advice about the topic of like autism and stuff for obvious reasons. He has known me for a long, long time. He's been a friend of mine, and obviously he knows that I'm someone who publicly has come out and said as much, right? But the one mistake he made was this, mate, and here's what people don't know. I never give unsolicited advice. I don't do it. Never to my friends. What I do is this, right? If you ask me for advice, yeah, I'll give you my thoughts. But I'm that sort of person where it's like, maybe it'd be obnoxious to someone like that to get that. Maybe he doesn't care. Maybe he has his own opinions, right? So what he didn't ask me was this, though. Should I go public with it? Because I don't think I would have given him the answer he thinks, mate. He might think from my tweet that it's great to go public. You know what my advice to everyone who's ever come to me privately since then is? Don't ever even fucking think about going public. It will be the rod that will be used to beat you for the rest of your life. And not only that, I've even seen a darker side, which is they'll beat you with the rod that you're autistic, while also saying anything you actually do that they perceive as negative wasn't from the autism. You're just a piece of shit as well. You're disabled and a fucking asshole. You're not actually even disabled, by the way. It's not disability in that way, but that's how people think of it, sadly. So my problem is this, right? I'm sure you saw that thread, Richard. The entire thread went like this. Well, he's autistic, isn't he? And he said he has problems relating to people, so he probably couldn't relate to his teammates and was probably having issues. Doesn't this guy get it? He is getting kicked from every team for this problem. He just doesn't understand. That was for real, the general sentiment in this thread.
It was, yeah.
That was people's hypothesis. That was their theory crafting as to why he was kicked. And by the way, Mouse Spot's account, you opened that motherfucking door by doing it that way. Because as we've said, you made it the most weird circumstance of him being kicked, and didn't even give us the courtesy reach round of a bullshit excuse like JDC's just so promising we had to put him in. If you'd have gone with that angle, it's fine. So yeah, go on then.
I was going to add the Cyclone statement that was made with the move. So obviously that's their head coach. He said, after a disappointing EPL, all focus is on the RMR now. We decided that JDC's attitude, positivity, and communications will be vital for the team going forward. We know it's tough for Nathan, but we strongly believe in the positive impact of John's promotion. So listen, I understand.
Those first 2 words killed me right there, Richard. Yeah. I know exactly what a fan sees that. A fan doesn't hear, here is JDC. I am independently going to say his positive qualities. What they hear there is, JDC is going to give us a good attitude. Implication MBK didn't have one. Not in Mouse's mind, but in a fan's mind. JDC is positive. MBK is negative. I heard he's been kicked from team. Yeah, mate, that's you've basically signed his death warrant right there.
Yeah, exactly. And the thing is as well, why this is another reason why I wish organizations would sort of understand a little bit that right, when you remove a player from a team, especially one like this, which is like 25 maps, it's unbelievably premature and weird. It's an anomaly in professional Counterstrike for a player to come in for 25 maps and get kicked. Who are you? Smoo you? That's a joke going, right? But the because it's been a heavy episode, but a bit of levity. But the reality there is that, like, it's not. If I kick a young, promising player, the framing has to be completely different.
Yes.
So if I kick an old tenured veteran, or if I have a player, I don't know, let's say that has publicly made a statement saying, "I realize that I have autism, and I didn't realize how this caused me to interact with my teammates, and I am working on facilitating that." The absolute thing you cannot fucking mention in the replacement is things like positivity, communication. Because what you're implying there, an attitude, because what you're implying there is whether or not you say anything negative about NBK, if I am putting someone in because they add something, the implication
it
is
was
I am
essential. We
taking
didn't have it.
yeah, exactly.
Absolutely.
And so what you've absolutely hung Nathan out to
Yes.
dry there. And I got to say, I would absolutely feel aggrieved if I was him,
completely.
because when you're dealing with something like that publicly and you're being open and transparent about it, and you are offering essentially a mea culpa for who you are, and you can't help it,
Yeah,
right?
Sure.
Please, can I walk away with a little bit of dignity?
Yes.
Can we say something just along the lines of, like, JDC really impressed us with his play? He came in and he did really well. Or actually, we just recently changed coaches, and unfortunately MBK is not in Cyclone's plans, and so we've decided that we're going to give Cyclone the leeway to pick the roster he wants, and he wants JDC. And then, yeah, all right, the org might get criticised, the coach might get criticised. Don't hang the player. He's got to go get another team. I mean, you have essentially, by the way, ended MBK's career with
this was his last stop salute,
yeah,
of course.
I think so. Yeah. So, and what a weird, sad note to go out on.
Mental.
And again, keep in mind, as I said, he wasn't amazing. He was never going to be amazing again, but he was not bad. And Mouse with MBK in did look better than prior to him joining.
So
and that's only with a 25 map sample size.
Yeah, first of all, the sample size works both ways. I always said on this show for years, takes 3 or 4 lands before you know who a team is. They had played one ever. Then you're already, and it was a team, by the way, with newer players like Torzy, etc. And then they had the standard at kind of 8. So everyone knows what the fuck up with this team. So anyway, my problem goes like this. In terms of a pure eye test alone, I agree, it doesn't make sense. Because here's the problem I have, right? And it's going to tie into the latter point, which is, why did I recruit MBK? I didn't recruit MBK to be a star frag. I didn't recruit him to be an up-and-coming player that could play for my team for many years. I didn't recruit him to be the franchise of the player of the team in the future. I didn't recruit him because I've worked with him and I enjoy his positivity. No, that's all separate, right? So if the JDC guy was good, why wasn't JDC in the team in the first place? We're only talking about fucking a month and a half ago or something mental. So my problem with this is I don't have any private information. This is purely speculation. I do not believe Mouse Sports, in good faith, recruited NBK to this project. Because in my opinion, to do so, you would have to tell him 2 things up front, and it would go like this. 1, the coach of your team is going to be Cyclone, the coach of our academy squad. And he has very high opinions of some of the players, including players in your role in that squad. So 2, if you join this team, understand you will always be competing for your spot with one of those academy players. If you prove to be the better player, we will happily have you as the starter. But there is an eventuality in which this person will come. Because here's my issue. If this is really a move that's just all about the JDC guy, and it isn't, based on the eye test, about NBK being bad at being NBK. By the way, NBK was doing exactly what you'd expect from him. And obviously part of why you recruit him is fucking intangibles that don't go on a HLTV scoreboard. So anyway, my problem with this is this. if you didn't remove him for doing something wrong, not living up to your expectations, you did it just because this other guy's more of a prospect and he's an up-and-coming guy, then you essentially fucked this guy over. You made him waste his last chance on a team that you were never committed to, because as you see, after 25 maps, you were pulling the plug, maybe for nothing he even did. I think that's not in good faith. Like, I don't think that's the way orgs reasonably can go and recruit people. Like, when I join your team, we're not just, it's not McDonald's, mate. You're not some cynical manager. It's like, give you your hours, you get your minimum wage. Like, no, you're like, we're joining a partnership. We're trying to accomplish something. Half the fucking messages for every team's about how you're all family. This is how you treat your family, for fuck's sake.
Well, in esports, yeah. Yeah, it is.
Robert Olin, like, well, about that,
yeah, it turns out you do. Turns out I thought I had many a family member, but don't. And so look, you know, for me, I agree. I think that's the key component to it. He coming in, you know, had a number of options. He knew probably it was his last chance to play at a high level in CSGO, and he made this decision predicated on the fact that you look at that roster as well.
Even an interesting project.
Yeah, and no, but what's mad about it is, I suppose, in any of the teams you could have been replaced if MBK had been sort of thinking a bit ahead. The one with the best academy side.
Oh, no, that's the downside. Is I even praised the fact that it's genius to bring in the Cyclone guy because he will know when to bring these people up. The downside, if you're MBK, is he's done it immediately. He's played the trump card instantly. My other issue is this, right? Is how are people just going to look at the fucking HLTV rating and tell me if this is a good move or not? If I sign NBK, the most decorated player in the history of French CSGO, who I will again reiterate, minus from 2021, every single year of his career from 2012 to 2020, he was in a team that at one point was ranked top 6 in the world. No one probably ever in the history of Counterstrike will have a record like that, by the way. That is probably a record even fucking like Device doesn't have, if you don't know. Like, this is someone with an insane amount of experience. And every team he was in, you know how every fan's going to repeat back things I told them, like he had a lot of disputes with his IGLs. He was also having disputes because he was a key secondary caller who usually was part of the team that made the structure of the squads. So some of those disputes, by the way, one, won you majors, two, were right, and sometimes he actually eschewed people like Existence, Happy. Notice, by the way, he used to be the one who had the timing perfect of when to cut them and to move on with his project to someone else. So the idea that he didn't bring anything outside of like raw crosshair placement, he does. So that's why I also find this particular move bullshit, I have to say, Richard. Because like I said, you never recruited this guy thinking he was fucking Monacy. You didn't think he was some stud. You recruited him for those intangibles and also to balance your fucking squad out. They've done the same mistake in this team right now that they've made in all the bloody LEC teams. If you watch League of Legends now, they've recruited too many of the up-and-coming players. So what happens is you don't have any bloody veterans, and you get all these skilled individual players who've never won anything and never played in a top team before. So they don't know what teamwork looks like. They don't know what winning the game is about. They don't know even how to act as a top professional. So what you've done in this team right here is you already had all the young talent. You had a bevy of young talents. Even your bloody IGL's pretty new to the game. You need at least one veteran, for fuck's sake. It's called balance. You want to actually like bring in more to the squad. So to me, that's the silliest part of this, is now you've made your team just a fucking academy squad on steroids. So I actually think, yes, you'll probably get more fragging out of JDC. I'll go ahead and predict you'll probably also see some issues with the team structure at times.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting because I mean, I don't have a particularly lot of faith in Mouse overall. I don't think they're going to suddenly break into the top 5 or, I don't
know what their expectations were as well, because this is what's weird, Richard. I actually thought at those tournaments that was fine for me because I didn't look. I bet if you go and look who they lost to, it was like top fucking 10 teams at least. Like, it was definitely good squads. And then on top of that, like, did anyone think this team was going like top 4 or something? Like, what sort of mad expectations for LAN 1 did these guys have?
I mean, if anything, I would say, since they brought Torzy in, like, that to me has been a revelation that's leveled up their game. He's looking legit. But if you look at their ESL Pro League campaign that they just come off the back,
that's exactly where I would have expected them to be. Literally,
the surprise is they did get a win against G2. But like, I would have only had them getting 2 wins in that group anyway.
Agreed.
And that was against the Looking for Org, and I had them over Fnatic because Fnatic were playing with 3 standings.
Yes, of course. You couldn't expect anything. Yeah.
You know, but I wouldn't have them over Entropic. I wouldn't have them
No.
over NIP. I wouldn't have had them over G2. So to me, it's like you say, it's about expectations. They performed to expectation. Well, I get it. You want to improve. You want to get better, but you know, you also have to give things time. I just feel like you say, one campaign, that's not enough, and it's just sad the way it panned out.
I've got one last angle for you.
Yeah,
Here's the
go for it.
last angle, and I hate that I even have to think this, but the League of Legends fucking teams have trained me. This is how it goes. I'll tell you another reason to do this move right now, Richard. Because once I cut MBK, remember I can release him as well if I want. I don't have to pay his salary anymore. I doubt MBK was on fucking minimum wage. Meanwhile, who the fuck knows what JDC gets paid? For all I know, maybe he's on a contract still from his academy squad. Maybe this is like when you get like fucking Patrick Mahomes on a rookie contract, Richard. And the joke is you have the best quarterback, second best, but you have him for like ridiculously discounted, don't you, compared to what he should get paid? Like he's not getting paid 30 million a year. I don't even know he's on much like 10 million or something. So like, there's a cynical element in this because if people don't know in League of Legends in LEC right now, you might naively think, oh, the 10th best team, well, they have really good players, right? No, the 10th best team doesn't have anywhere near the 10th best players in Europe because the 10th best team in LEC, the worst team, just cynically just takes players that are very cheap from the scene below. And in fact, you have really good players who were at the level, essentially the equivalent is if in the Premier League, the best players weren't in the bottom teams of the Premier League, they weren't like the 25th best, but they were in the top of the championship. That's what it's like in this game now. So unfortunately, I want to get your take on that. What would you guess on that? You think it is the case that, because surely they haven't given this guy a new contract now or something. I would imagine he's still on his original one, right? It was even implied that might have been going on with Bit in Navi, if you remember. But they even got him super cheap in that sense, you know.
Yeah, I don't know. It's a weird one because it's like you say. I think you're probably it's probably in your academy contract that at any time you can be airlifted into the main team, and you might get like a performance bonus or something, or you might get like an appearance fee, because that would make sense in an academy contract as an incentive to play better and get airlifted in. But yeah, I mean, almost certainly he's going to be on a lot less. I don't think they renegotiated. I think they just had him on the books anyway, like all the academy teams. I mean, one of the advantages of doing it with the existence of the We Play League is, they can sort of trundle away and have some brand benefit now. Academy teams never used to have that because there wasn't anywhere for them to play. If they could go to a tournament that your main team could go to, you couldn't have an academy side compete there. So, I think probably, I mean, it's probably a bit of min-maxing going on. We know Mouse historically always do that.
Classic org for it.
Yeah.
And that's the one thing I forgot to say as well. The reason it kills me that they of all orgs made this move, Richard, is you'll notice it was only on very rare occasions I ever asked for Chris J to be cut from Mouse Sports. And that's because what Chris J did for those Mouse Sports lineup is what I expected NBK to do for this one. Your job is just be the fill player, the super vet, and the standing IGL. And that is what Chris J used to do, and that is what NBK I thought was going to do for this lineup of players. But apparently, and this is what I don't get, is how is there no mea culpa from the org, Richard? Surely at a minimum, there's an apology that goes like this. We were mistaken in the player that we either thought NBK was or what we needed. Because the weirdest part also is this. Right, remember, if this is just about the JDC guy playing better, cool. NBK's bench, you might be able to come back in the future. They've made it like, thanks, but see ya. Like, what is like?
It's very fine.
Something about it does, even if it's just badly communicated, something about it's off. I'm with you. Something's real weird about the way it's messaged.
I mean, like I say, personally, I think there's more with the meets the eye. And
there's a vibe of that.
I mean, at the end of the day, maybe Nathan doesn't know this because it's like, obviously the messaging now is that, I didn't do anything wrong. Nobody ever told me, mate, you've been in esports long enough, Nathan. People don't come to your face. It's like fucking Goodfellas, mate. Your killers greet you with smiles. So you probably pissed someone off and not knowing it. Probably the IGL and or the coach in some way, probably in some really minor and trivial way. But unfortunately for you, you happen to be at a team now that's got an academy side waiting in the wings where everyone's just happy and
just waiting for an excuse to bring them up. Yeah, exactly.
Exactly. So, at the end of the day, mate, don't piss down my back and tell me it's fucking raining. And one last one, and then we'll get into viewer questions. Brawlan, the highly touted move. I mean, we did talk about this on previous episodes, but it's been finalized now after a lot of weird wrangling. Seemed to take a while to get it over the line. It was reported that the reason the Brolan to Nip move didn't happen sooner was that Fnatic were holding out for a larger fee. Fnatic obviously dropped him from
Which, by the way,
RMR,
Fnatic
from
would never
Poly.
do, because if you know in League of Legends, only scumbag orgs ever ask for the highest amount
That
ever.
is
And you're
true,
a
yeah.
piece of shit if you don't let the player go where you go.
Especially
As
if you
told
don't want to
me-
sell him to rivals.
Exactly. As told to me by, checks notes, Fnatic fans. All right.
Yeah.
By the way, enjoy your NFTs, you absolute two-faced cunts. You know what? This is how amazing esports has become, Richard. There's not even, normally back in the day, to catch people on context was like, yeah, but 2 years ago you said this. Now it's like a week ago you said this. Like,
Oh, yeah.
When G2 fucked up with the NFTs, all the Fnatic fans were down their fucking throat. Only today, because Sam Matthews, fair enough, he didn't use the word NFT. Essentially, he's just done his own, and they're all just in on it now. Like, yeah, great initiative. Like, y'all can't be helped. Y'all just can't be helped. By the way, how has no one even thought of that angle? That's how FaZe aren't even thinking. Just don't call it an NFT. People are stupid enough. They'll be like, but Thorin, it is a citizen card. Like, you know what I mean? Like, it's so stupid, isn't it? I know.
So,
But yes, anyway, they sold him for a fucking king's ransom. Spoiler.
Yes, that's the word on the street. That they did indeed get the bag for the player, and so now we're left with question marks about NIP, because obviously Brolan joining is good. I would say it's a net upgrade, but it does come with the caveat that we're thinking of a lineup in our mind that I don't know if it exists yet, because
It's a mega tantalizing one. Imagine, guys, if I just tell you these names: Device, Brolan, Hampus, Rez. If you're not already hard, you don't know Swedish Counterstrike, mate. That's already like that's the starting of like. Remember, we're in a world where there might be no Na'Vi, there might be no Gambit, there might be no Entropic. Like, guys, for real, this is where like if Nip does it right, this is the team, isn't it? But the question is, does that team ever even play Counterstrike? Who the fuck knows, right? Do they ever play a game?
I've sent Sam there the deleted tweet from Hitchum Shaheen.
Classic.
So for those who don't know, Hitchum basically said, Hitchum the NIP CEO, he basically said, listen, now that we've got Brolan, this wasn't the work of me alone, but a whole lot of work going a gazillion years back by many amazing people to bring NIP back to life. The NIP CS lineup is officially fire. When Deva is back, I guess we're still doing that. When Deva is back, it is
probably in his contract, to be fair,
Fire, double fire emoji. We need to win trophies now. Let's fucking go ninjas. And then that tweet was deleted when somebody posted it on Reddit saying, oh, Deva's coming back.
Just think how insane this is, Richard. Right? Remember, we've just given a PR lesson to ESIC, to fucking, what was the last pick we were talking about? It was
whatever.
Navi or whatever. I can't remember who it was.
Yeah,
no, Mouse Spots. Sorry, yeah, Mouse Spots obviously with their statement. Right, this is the maddest of them all. Right, if the message you wanted to send to the public, which as far as I know is what Nip wants to send to the public, is, look, we're not going to comment on it, but of course Device is just taking that time off for his mental health. Brolan's our new signing, but in time, give us a bit of chance. We'll get the team back together. To say that he's coming back and then delete it actually gives me the opposite impression. It now gives me the impression like, oh, you fucked up, you promised he's coming. Now you've just created doubt in a scenario where aside from me, and remember I was purely speculating, nobody else thought it was ever a possibility he was leaving except for the Astralis hypothetical last year. But like, you've actually now created doubt where there wasn't any.
No, but also what these people never fucking account for, and this is like a key lesson, by the way, like, because obviously I'm as a journalist, I know messaging and how these things will play out, and I've done PR. I've been on the other side of the fence. So here's the problem you've created with that. The implication now is when Deva is back, it is fucking fire. We need to win trophies with this lineup. The implication is if Deva doesn't come back, the lineup is not fire emoji.
Which if he wasn't ever to come back would look pretty bad, wouldn't it, in a few months?
You have now essentially insulted whoever it is that replaces Deva. And on top of that, you are now saying, well, we can't win trophies because we need to win trophies if Deva's in the team. But if he isn't, do we need to? Will we? Could we? Can we? It's one of these things. It's like
he did also use the phrase officially. The NIP lineup is now officially fire.
Yeah.
Whatever that means. Sorry.
Yeah. So, whatever. So it's like that old legal idiom. Never ask a question you don't already know the answer to. And so when you're dealing with PR and you make these absolute statements, you have to be absolutely sure the absolute is an absolute. And the implication of deleting that tweet to me is that you don't. And unfortunately also, remember, boomers, the internet, doesn't matter how quickly you delete it, doesn't matter how many times you Google search, can I delete an email? It doesn't matter. It's out there, it's there forever, and there's more and more ways of
I'd love to
confirming.
just know the search history of fucking Ancient Jane, just for the comedy ones like that. Like, how do I delete a tweet on everyone else's computer? Like,
what is Adrenal?
I know.
Esports Illuminati, kids, it's real. So it's not real. So anyway, or is it? That's something in the. If I was in the Illuminati, I would say that, wouldn't I?
True. That would be on the score 2 line, wouldn't it?
I'm clearly not an adrenochrome. Look at the state of me. Anyway, so the reality is like just a weird framing, and also now does show a little bit of doubt about who Brolan is indeed replacing and whether or not Device is coming back. Now, look, my read is don't. This is just, what the reason he probably deleted this tweet is just to hedge his bets. Right, that's all that is. I don't think you can sort of directly say, "Oh, Device might not be coming back as a result of this," but certainly it does cast a little bit of doubt. And also, let's not forget now that we're about to go in April, and the last time Device played for NIP was the second week of December at the end of the year. So again, the fact that NIP
months and months and months ago now.
Yeah, the fact that NIP haven't done any messaging around this,
isn't it?
Device hasn't given us any status updates. Like, listen, so we all agree mental health is tricky. And by the way, there is nobody that has like been to the depths of where you can plummet with mental health problems. Probably me and you fucking have a really good window into it. So it's not that we're not sympathetic and we're trying to trivialize it, but the reality is
it's affecting 4 other people's careers.
If this was a player with a cruciate ligament injury, you would be saying he's had his first training session today. He's been back on the weights.
Yes.
He's and things like that. You would update the players.
It's even a clever tactic because think about it.
Exactly.
You're not promising he comes back. You're just saying, look, there is a time frame to this. We're getting him along the steps because they do this. Like the famous thing they do in hockey is they just say that you're on the ice again because that's like the first thing. The second you can go on the ice, that means you can skate. That means eventually you'll be able to hit it. You know what I mean?
Exactly.
Like, they haven't done that. And not only that, here's another problem I have, dude. Is let's be real. It's because it's Device. Like, if this was LNZ that I'd stay 3 months, he's just cut now. Like, that's it.
Oh, yes, sure.
I'm also getting sick of that. I can have compassion for Device while understanding he's affecting other people as well, potentially negatively, even if he's justified. So if I'm Device, take as long as you need, mate. If you need another year, take it. But at some point in time, like Richard says, it's been over 3 months now since you played a game. At some point, you have to let the other players in NIP continue their careers as well. You can't just hold them. And I'll even give the analogy. I think Olaf Meister did this with FaZe Clan in 2018. I know it was a very serious reason, but the way he kept them with uncertainty, that did affect that lineup of that team, mate. That changed the whole complexion of those people's careers potentially, and whether some of them would ever win a major. So as much as I have a lot of sympathy for Device, this is getting to the point now where if I'm a NIP player, if I'm the NIP or if I'm a NIP fan, we got to have some sort of like timeline, some sort of certainty. We can't be on this limbo till the major. This would be a nightmare if you ruin this major off this.
I mean, listen, I'll also add, I'd probably cynically bash them on this podcast if they did do this. But there is a world where having those regular updates, you can sort of frame it in a positive light that, look, we do take it seriously. We're working we're working alongside the CSPPA, but who made overtures about what they wanted to do with mental health. Device has been enrolled in this program. There's been some positive stuff. He's really looking forward to getting back, and here's a blanket statement from Device. Obviously, I'd fucking fry him on this podcast for doing that. But the point still stands. You could be doing that. And the silence is like deafening, and deleted tweets like this are terrible optics. Overall, by the way, just as one final thought, and then we'll get to viewer questions. Let's assume it is the official double fire emoji lineup. And Device does come back. What reasonable expectations should we have for that NIP lineup? It's got to be top 5, bare minimum.
Oh, right? Easily, yeah. I have very high expectations if they make that exact lineup I'm talking about. Like, to me, the obvious person that removed, I know people will go, but he's good. It's Plopsky. He has to go eventually. It just seems obvious to me. So my issue is this. I still think they might have an issue in terms of IGL, but if you have pieces as good as this, you can get, here's what people don't realize, you can get away with not having the best IGL if you have really sick players. So like, I agree. If you look at those players on paper, that's a top 5 lineup. And especially in a world where like at a minimum, at least one of these CIS teams that's really good is disappearing, if not one and a half of them, and one of them was the best. So I think with the very uncertain world elsewhere outside of NIP, I think there's for sure a chance to be top 5. And it's even, I mean, look at the uncertainty, mate. Like in a world where maybe Monacy can't play for G2, you can win the major with this lineup. It's not impossible. It'd be an outsider. It'd be a dark horse. But it is weird. If they make this NIP lineup, it'd be like VP at the last major for me. It'd be my dark horse.
Sure,
you know?
it's more of a dark horse than when we call them a dark horse.
Yes.
Before.
Yes.
So definitely something to watch.
It would be a very exciting lineup, though. I'd love to watch it play.
Right. Let's get into.
Even though I will say, even though again, I'm not using any behind the scenes info for this. For some reason, though, just call it journalistic instinct. You know what it's like, Richard. Sometimes you don't have the evidence yet, but leading you that way, you just later find it, right? Which I know every cynical cunt's going to. You just wanted to find confirmation bias. I'm not talking about that. You know what I'm talking about. But basically, unfortunately, I do have an itch that tells me this is all some sort of fuckery and some our device isn't coming back and he never plays for NIP again. I know it's mad, but it's just I just had that vibe from when I noticed these moves started to happen. Something was off with it, you know.
Well, it seems mental to me that if that was the case,
I mean, they'd look very stupid from how they've messaged it so far. I'm with you, but
yeah, no, but I mean, so my you know, it's almost like surely it's better to play in a team you're not happy with for an org you're not happy with, if indeed that is the case, than it is to just sit and shelve a year of your career. And
I don't get it. Yeah,
whatever. Anyway, viewer questions. Satan says, "How much has your ring?"
Wait a minute, wait. Is it really called Satan?
Yeah, we got.
Right, so we got someone pays our patron, literally called Satan.
Literally
called in our podcast. Right, whatever. Yeah. I guess this point shouldn't even be surprised. If
it makes it any better for you, I do believe his full username is Satan666.
Oh well, that's unexpected. Come on,
just the number of the beast.
I know.
So he asks, and this is for me specifically because I don't think you've played Elden Ring, have you? Yeah. How much has your ring piece been swollen from Swollen Ring?
I'd also rather not ever answer that question. Believe it or not.
Well, it's because I call it Swollen Ring because the game is hard, but I just haven't had time. They're just, the idea, by the way, guys, if you think you can be plugged into esports to the degree morons and losers like me are, and that we have sort of any time for fun or there's any sort of work-life balance. Yeah, no, there really
I've always told people there's 2 factors that people don't get. One, bad news if you're trying to compete against me in the world of content. I do this for fun as well as my job. You'll get bored, mate. You'll do it when you feel like it. You won't. The point is, I always said this. Do you watch all the Netflix shows? Have you played all the new games? Do you have a World of Warcraft account? Spoiler, you can't beat me then. Logistically, you don't have enough
already
hours in the day. Yeah, because while you were doing that, I was doing more of these videos. And the other thing is this.
I studied the blade.
This is why it's so sad when you interview pro players and you find out that, they barely know anything about other teams. They barely know anything about the scene. Spoiler, they're just watching anime and fucking stupid shows and playing games. They're just... Half of them aren't even as in the scene as we are, as mad as that sounds. Like, professional players, some of them don't fucking... They just do the bare minimum. It's just reality, I'm afraid.
Yeah. So
why are you good at this game? Because I've heard isn't it supposed to be in the vein, like you said, Dark Souls shit, where it's just about being super hard or whatever, just a grind or some shit in it.
Definitely not. And
it doesn't seem like your sort of game.
No, it's good. It is a good game, and I love all the Souls games.
Oh, okay.
But it's just this one. It's like you've got to really put some time into it, and in sort of in many ways, like. Every time I get these games that need 120 hours, sort of minimum, just to get a playthrough under your belt, I don't know why I'm starting them because I'm never going to finish them.
Oh, it's meant a lot of time,
So, and the last game I got to really put a lot of time into, as I said, was The Witcher 3. And I sunk 400 hours into that, which is mega. But so the game hasn't really even bent me over yet because I haven't even got to the end stage bosses or anything. I've only put about 20 hours in. So, we'll see. Maybe one day there will be a stream, maybe not. Chingu, which CS personalities would play which character in an ESL-sponsored remake of The Wire?
Ooh, let me think on this one. Plus, we could do some good ones here for sure.
Anders is bunk.
That's not a bad one. That's not a bad one.
He definitely is bunk.
Let me think.
Question is, who's McNulty? Probably Sadikist.
That's not a bad shout, actually. Here's the thing. I'm pretty sure he hasn't watched the show, so we'll probably safe on that one. Sorry. Because here's the sad thing. Even though people just say I'm blowing up your ass, like there's no one really can do this, but you actually probably, in esports context, you probably can be Omar. Because that's kind of your job in this.
You can't really say it, though, can you? Because he's
no,
too
because
cool.
I know exactly. People are going to be like, "How? Yeah, of course, you made yourself that character." I don't mean in all the context, obviously, but he is the fucking enforcer, isn't he? There's a bit of that going on.
Yeah, like I said, my low key, like one of my favorite characters in that whole series, like was always Prop Joe. I always wanted him to be in it more. He was just so fucking cool, that guy. Or Bunny Coleman. I could see myself being Bunny, you know, if no one can be Omar out of respect for just how mega that role was. I could see myself being a Bunny Coleman, you know, but what Bunny did with Amsterdam when he just basically legalized drugs just to show that it actually works. Like, just did something absolutely ridiculous, ruined his own career, fucked over his pension, but just as some sort of protest statement. So I could get on board with him.
Obviously, we're going to make, I guess, Snoop and Chris can be Pansy and Moses. You have to realise, by the way, almost no one in esports actually deserves to be any of these characters. Nearly all of them are way too cool and edgy. Cool, I know, exactly. They're all too good. They're all too good. That's what, if people don't know, by the way, the reason this is on the one hand a very interesting question, but actually a very hard one, is because the thing that makes The Wire good is that the characters are very well developed and incredibly minute. Like they're not black and white characters at all. There's so much nuance, and spoiler, each season changes how you think of each character and their relationship. And so it's actually one of the reasons why it's actually super hard as a question. It's not as simple as like cardboard cutouts where you just pick one for Anders or whatever, you know.
Mate, right, I'll give you a choice.
Come on.
You can be Weebay, right? Because obviously when he gets all them bodies put on him, he just goes, yeah, I did that one. Yeah, I did that one. Yeah, he just didn't give a fuck. Just took it all, took the hit for the crew, like just didn't give a shit. And did it basically for a fucking, just give me a burger with some fucking horseradish on it. Like even the food he orders is just straight fire. Or more likely for me, you can be Brother Moves On.
If I have to be someone, it's not bad.
I just picture you in the middle of like the hood reading a book.
Of course.
Just with a fucking gun on you. So yeah, I'd definitely have you in as brother. Do we know any more on
this show? Definitely watch it. Just give it a go. Although I will say, here's the downside.
Yeah.
Because when I say this, you're gonna think I'm tricking you like all your friends do, like my friend Monty did to me when he goes, "The Expanse is incredible." And then I watched the first season and I go, "The first season's shit though." And he goes, "Oh yeah, you got to get past that." And I'm like, "What? You didn't tell me I had to watch like fucking 10 hours before it gets good. What?"
Actually, thought first season was all right.
Yeah, I think it was a bit shit. But the problem is with The Wire,
Joe Miller carries it.
It gets better
Unlike
and better
ESL.
and better every season onwards. That's the problem. So, I would say, put it this way. Here's the difference. I'll be fair, unlike the others. If you don't like season one, you probably won't like it as a show, actually, to be fair. Yeah. But if you do like season one, it gets way better. So just don't think like, yeah, it's good, but it's not that good. It gets way better after the first season. Essentially, it's a show where the best quality is how they totally reinvent the concept every major season. They're amazing at that in this show.
What's really interesting is season 2 is everyone's bottleneck.
Really? I would have thought it'd be later on, like maybe like
no. If you go and ask around,
they can't handle that. I thought there was a 6 switch up.
Yeah, see, I do too. I didn't
mega, wasn't it? That's why it got mega.
Because I was like so invested in the characters and like it's just like here's the bot, here's the dot. But like what you realize obviously is it literally is about the city, right?
Yes,
and all the intersecting components that make up a city, make up a society. We're talking to the sort of meta narrative is actually way more important than all these little
it was like creating the ecosystem that they were in, wasn't it? So you could see how it all interfaced with each other.
Exactly, because you have to, if you want to understand crime, you have to understand poverty. If you want to understand poverty, you have to understand business, industry, the political decisions that impact on that. It is all, and what it was saying there was like, listen, they're all miniature character studies, but the real character study is Baltimore.
Yes.
Right. So, and I'm sure there's been many a pretentious cunt that said that.
Yeah, of course.
But it is mega, but loads of people struggle with season 2. Everyone I've talked to goes like, why should I care about Sabotka?
Right.
And it's like, you know, and then of course in
It's also a
season
show where
3,
they understand that the Chekhov's gun principle. They never waste your time introducing characters that aren't going to go somewhere. So
No, exactly, yeah.
you have to, even if you don't know where the investment's going, like trust me, they're going to do something with the major character if they bring it in.
And that was why I always felt that out of all of the seasons, and I believe this is heresy, I think season 3 is the weakest because to me, it did snap back a little bit from season 2. I think they were like, holy shit, we might get cancelled or something.
Right.
So that's the season you'll notice that as the Brother moves on story arc, the Omar and Brother teaming up story arc, going after Stringer Bell.
Yeah,
and it did get a little bit like a fucking anime or something.
They definitely, with the character of Omar, knew that there's a famous concept in TV where sometimes a character gets, apparently like Spike in Buffy the Vampire Slayer was like this. It's like the character gets too popular, you just have to keep writing them into all the stories. Yeah, exactly. You can tell that happened to that Omar character totally. Because he went from being like a really cool character to like, it was almost like the bloody mascot of the show by the end, wasn't he? Like,
yeah. Which by the way, it was just such a, I mean, it was great writing, but just a hell of a performance as well.
What a sick god that actor did. It's the guy that died last year, wasn't it?
Yeah, Michael Clark, yeah, I'm sure. So anyway, yeah, so there you go. There's some names. BP 420, who has more skeletons in the closet, Riot execs or Gravelord Night Lords? Not a bad reference there. But I mean, listen, the Riot executives, obviously that all came up again after my article. It was really interesting watching the reaction to that. When I put that article out about, Sean and DDK and how Riot do all this fuckery, because literally there was loads of Valorant fans who just didn't know the history at all.
Oh, that's cool. That's what you call it.
What was really interesting was, and look, maybe we're at some tipping point where if I write about Valorant, the Zoomers are gonna get it and understand what I'm trying to do and why I do it. And maybe understand journalism as a function, how even opinion pieces like that can be an essential component of journalism. Maybe they'll get it quicker than the League of Legends Zoomers did, because obviously those kids, they were like, "What's it? Why is he saying these things? None of these are just things he thinks." It's like, yes.
Oh, by the way, over in League, if people don't know, people in League, some of them agreed with Doublelift's take on the Peter Zhang story of like, yeah, but why is he printing things that Peter Zhang said didn't happen? And I remember just sitting there going like, how are you even having an opinion on this? Like, you don't know what you're talking about.
Yeah, that's
what? By the way, I actually have a similar vibe, even though initially, because they were such dickheads, because we were from CSGO, and anytime I commented on it, you can imagine what my Twitter feed was like. I thought, it's going to be like bloody COD again and Overwatch, because Overwatch has the worst fans ever, by the way, pound for pound. Also, a little joke I put in there unintentionally, but yeah, definitely pound for pound. No, but the bigger problem is this. I've actually found I'm getting the same vibe, believe it or not, Richard. Even though people initially, if they think you're talking shit about Valorant, will be hostile, if you're not actually actively hostile, they actually seem way more open and receptive than some of the other scenes. Like, I almost get the vibe they know they need people in their
scenes. Mirage. It could be an illusion, because right now they're going in on George a lot. And I think,
come on, surely not.
Yeah, for real. And I think George had his I think him and another reporter published a story about his
popularity contest or something.
No, it was about his potentially leaving NRG, and his come out.
And they all killing the messenger, like, how dare you say that?
Well, no, because it looks like the story was indeed wrong, because like all of the NRG org came out and publicly said like this is complete
so George is missed
for the first time in his career.
No, that's going to be rough.
Yeah, and so basically, as you know, it doesn't matter how many times you get.
No, of course not.
Like the impossible standard that esports journalists are held up to.
Mate, people even say publicly things like, how could you trust my opinion? I've never been proven to lie in 20 years. I keep challenging people. Come on, show me the lie. They can't even show one. They don't even reference one anymore. No one even has a go-to example in 20 years. But the joke is, I am still treated like I'm like the most suspect person ever. It's mental.
Yeah.
So imagine being a journalist who on record's got it wrong. Fucking hell. It's the end of the world.
Yeah. So basically, they were going after him over that, and it's like, listen. It's ridiculous to sort of ever assume people are going to have 100% accuracy their entire career, or it's about how you handle being wrong, not about whether or not you are wrong. And so yeah, they've been going after George for a while, but I've said it to him privately, because obviously I am the patron saint of all journalists, and we all talk. And I literally will help any journalist that wants to get on in the scene and do on a regular basis. But, you know, I've told him, once you start doing all that stupid influencer bullshit on your Twitter timeline, you do invite a degree of fucking critique and criticism because you're right. If you try and appeal to morons that like that kind of stuff, that's your fan base now. If you do influencer stuff, taking selfies and fucking duck facing,
Yeah, that's true. He has played to that crowd. He's gone too close to the fire.
Well, guess what? Those cunts don't understand journalism. Yes. So
he has courted the sort of FaZe Clan's fans of the world, as it were.
Yeah. So anyway, Detlef asks, Richard, I watched your last interview with Henry, and I remember he said he wouldn't come back to CS after all the hate, but I'm still not giving up hope. Is there any way to get him back? I really miss him. He won't be back, guys. You have to understand how psychologically jarring it is for anyone who has done good work, dedicated themselves to a craft, dedicated themselves to an industry, tried to make it a better place, and then they do one thing you don't like, or they try something new, and all of the people that claim to be fans, claim to be supporters, universally turn on you and say things that are all provably false, lazy narratives, lie about you, and essentially just deconstruct all of the goodwill you've built up in a space of seconds. I can talk about it. I'm one of the most lied about people in esports. The hate I get, nothing is off the table. Personal tragedies, anyone will use it, right? It doesn't matter. Anything I've gone through, anything I've been open about, you obviously talking about how you've tweeted out, yes, I have autism. People just use that. And as you said, you don't, because it's you don't even get the benefit of being able to use that as a shield. For you, it is only a sword, but not one you get to wield, one that is stabbed into your back repeatedly over and over and over again. And it's shameful because when you take that and apply it to somebody else, it is bullying, but not for you. You can never be bullied, Duncan. You can only be a bully. And because of who we are and the way we sort of have our identities and the way that we have to have positions of strength, even when we might be vulnerable, because it's necessary to the work we do. That is just something we have to endure. So let me tell you guys, I'll give you some insight into this because it's happened to me time and time again. I go back occasionally, I look at threads, I look at times I wrote articles about actual provable match fixers and cheaters, who, by the way, are surely something we can all agree upon that is bad for the scene and are scum, and there has to be some sort of penalties issued against them. Let me tell you, in the aftermath of the Lauder incident, which remains, again, just this unbelievable incident that I have to still talk about. It happened in 2015. It's 2022. It still gets talked about. It still gets lied about, right? People were just doing it the other day, right? Remember, I acted completely in self-defense as found by police who would have been compelled to prosecute me if there had been any, because it happened in Sweden, if there had been any evidence to the contrary of that, right? All of those things remain true. I was never arrested. Again, despite all these supposed eyewitnesses and all the evidence of the thing that definitely happened, it's just widely reported that I lost my temper with someone randomly and choked them out at an esports event, right? So I just have to deal with that. Now, in the aftermath of that, by the way, the CS community, I mean, should they care? You know, honest question. Like, should they be up in arms about it? For someone that's like been on the wall, trying to help the scene progress, giving you know, generally what I notice is in like other esports scenes, there's a bias towards the native sons, so to speak. Absolutely none of that given to me, by the way, mate. Everybody couldn't wait to dogpile me. And so I'm publishing articles about match fixes and everyone's going, you know, shouldn't be allowed to go to events. People who choke people out. Fuck Richard Lewis. I hope he dies. You know, and it's like, you know, I go back and I read those threads because, like, I need to remember what I gave up for, you know, I thought there was going to be like this ending to my career in esports where, you know, I'd be lauded in some way. Absolutely not. Absolutely not. You on a long enough timeline, you just know you will end up one of two things: despised or forgotten. Yes. That is it.
You know, the worst thing I even realized,
about knowing when to get out,
is I guarantee, get ready for this, because when we're gone, you'll just be able to watch this video and see if it's even on YouTube anymore. There's the worst thing of all, because I've seen this happen, play out, and you know what I'm talking about when I talk about this. This was with the majors and events. As I choose to not do events, I mean, for God's sake, I publicly have said I won't work with ESL and Blast. For fuck's sake, I chose that. You can even go and corroborate it. ESL, after I joined Flashpoint and said I would never work with them, came on this show on an episode I didn't appear on and went out of their way to state that they would work with me if I wanted to, essentially. They went out of their way to put it on record. But people still always frame it, Richard. Every time I turn an event down, I wasn't invited. And finally, I'm getting pushed out. And finally, I don't get the gigs, which then validates everything they've ever said about me, and finally everyone realizes I'm a piece of shit. So I already know, no matter how me and you leave this space, it will be treated that we will run out by losers on internet accounts that have no power over anyone, and they'll keep using that fucking collective we when it is so inappropriate. It's mental.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. So, I mean, so to link this to Henry, what you have to understand is, like, Henry didn't do anything wrong in how he handled Cloud9. He didn't do anything wrong whatsoever. And this is where it all starts. He got to the top, right, of a career. Now, listen, spoiler guys, you might not know this. Sometimes being the top of one thing's not enough for some people. I think there's some hubris. I think there could be some arrogance. I think there can be some narcissism involved. Oh. But, you know, you want to try your hand at other things. You want to see how good I can get at something else. And sometimes it backfires. Like we've seen a number of analysts go and be coaches. Doesn't always work out, right? We know that, but you shouldn't despise somebody for trying. I mean, put it this way. I remember when I interviewed Moses about this, and you can go and watch that episode of the Richard Lewis show. It was almost traumatizing because he went from being like a guy that like everybody liked. By the way, everybody loves Moses. He's just a fucking stand-up guy. He never gives any trouble to anybody, which again, the framing around the last major that he was in some way to blame for it was absolutely disgusting. He's just a guy who just turns up, does what he's told, will do any role. You want me as an analyst? You want me as a caster? Fuck it. He's even hosted a few. And he wanted to try something that he felt he could contribute to, which he's passionate about. The improvement of NA Counterstrike, right? I mean, he never really got the window for him as a player. It never really happened just because of the nature of the game and the way the scenes were evolving and the different type of game. So obviously he still feels connected to that. Also, privately behind the scenes, acting as a mentor and a point of contact to a lot of these players when they have problems, shit you would know absolutely nothing about. And so he thought, surely I have permission to just try it. Well, obviously in the aftermath, when it didn't work out, narratives, people tearing him down, non-stop abuse on social media, DMs telling him to kill himself. You can't understand why that vitriol would be there. You have to be built for that. And unfortunately, for a lot of people, when they're beloved at one thing, it is so psychologically jarring because the people who your abusers are people that cheered for you. Yes. They're people that have said nothing but positive things. But what I just realized is, unfortunately, basically, when you enter into a relationship with a fan, it's like having an abusive parent. It's like having an abusive family member. That 1 minute it's we love you, we love you, we love you. But at any time you show any autonomy or deviate from what they want, they will say the worst thing. They will try and hurt you in the worst ways. And people might just say that, you know, Tyler, the creator, tweet, why don't you just ignore it? A little bit different when you operate in a digital space. And by the way, you have to also understand the nature of a cyber hater, the nature of a troll. They don't go anywhere. They hate you forever. Yes. And they've got nothing in their lives but time. And they will fuck with you till the end of time. Let me tell you how I know this. There were literal accounts posting in that Valorant thread when it went to the front page, accusing me of brigading it somehow, even though there was moderators in that Reddit thread saying, Richard didn't brigade this. We've looked around. There's no evidence of it. And and where were they from? League of Legends subreddit. They are still parroting this false narrative those moderators put out about me because they are the damaged ones.
Yes.
They are imagine you love something, it's a huge part of your life, and you'll just never make a contribution to it. Meanwhile, someone who you don't quite vibe with or dislike gets to not just be in it and be in the show, they get to steer the fucking ship. They get to, it's infuriating to these people.
I've even had ones like that, dude, where the maddest to me is where they're a fan of a friend of yours, but they become like, you know, when you meet like a friend of your friend, it's sometimes a bit weird because it's like, well, we don't really know each other, but we're sort of like mutual friends with this guy. it's like they get jealous. They get
Yeah.
like the best example of this, by the way, is LS in League of Legends, right? I'm not joking. The majority of LS's own fans hate me. And in part because they know I'm his friend, which they will never be, and they desperately wish they were. So what they do is they're like this is the only analogy I can give you guys. They're like the beta male who's friends with your girlfriend, and every time she has a problem with you, he's just shit talking you, going, "Yeah, you should leave him," because low key he wants to get with her. He never will, but that's the sort of fucking some Iago type cunt, isn't he? So, mate, the amount of people like that, it's mental. Because as you say, like the sad thing about that one is, like, it's hard for me to even like hate on the public because they're his fans. Like they're the people who support him. So it's like, yeah, it's a fucking shit show. It's an absolute shit show.
Yeah. And so to link it all back to Henry, right? He went from basically like just taking a job, building a team, deliberately set himself up as a lightning rod. He thought he'd be allowed to do this, by the way. He thought he'd be allowed to be the showman he was on a broadcast for Cloud9, take a bit of pressure off the players.
If people don't get it, I thought this was understood, but I get it, it isn't now. What he was doing with the Cloud9 tweets and the vibe was like when he did the caches, you fucking idiots. Obviously, he doesn't really hate Mark Hunt and fucking Australians, does he? He's Chad's best friend, if you don't know. Like, the joke is, he thought that was WWE and that you'd all get it and that you'd even worse, he thought you'd all thank him for not giving you bullshit PR statements written by an agency, for having an actual human you know and love try and play up the stories to you, make it fun. And instead, you all just went, this will be great. We're going to fucking wreck this cunt with all that. Like, what?
Yeah.
This is why we can't have nice things.
Yeah, and then on top of that, you know, when every time the team failed, this willful purchase into the self-fulfilling prophecy from Cloud9 fans themselves. Like, I can't even understand the psychology of it, where because you didn't vibe with messaging from a guy that was employed by Cloud9 to build your team, and maybe you didn't like some of the decisions he made, you were there willfully wishing it to fail, calling for his head immediately. Mate, the emails that Jack used to get and the DMs Jack used to get, Henry one day will have to talk about it, but, you know, dozens of emails every day about why Henry was a bad choice. And so you were actively trying to, implode something you ostensibly care about. Then when it happened, remember, they were one game away from still being in existence, still maybe having a CS team to this day, right? And on the day it all sort of went under, the gloating, the threads.
Oh, it's mad.
Cloud9 flair, let's all laugh at Cloud9. You're Cloud9, aren't you? Don't you fans use the we? Not in this instance. So he had a window into something that only a few of us see in esports. But if you ever wonder why there's a raft of esports people that are on Twitter basically every day, and I know the signs, tweeting things out that are literal cries for help, it's because you go from a place where you think, you know, everyone sells you this idea it's a big family, your fans love you. You don't fucking love shit. You love
it's like
you.
You say, we've almost got to stop using that term community, because we're the opposite of a community.
Never has been.
You know, like we're a disparate group of people who come together to be shit to each other. That's what we are.
Yeah, and so people haven't been to that dark side.
Yes.
For me, I've been to that dark side 5-6 times. I've been in a hotel room thinking I might just fucking hang myself, like, because, you know, the pressure of what is going to wait for me outside is so outrageous. The Lauder situation was absolutely perfect. I had people coming up to me in that lobby at fucking DreamHack when I had to go back and face the music, knowing that the DreamHack staff had been up all night conspiring with Lauder, by the way, about the messaging that was that, and that these were bigger forces. And people that I'd known for years were coming up to me saying, "It's over, mate. You should just get out. You should just get out the industry. You should just quit." I had people literally sitting down with me going, "It's a bad one, this, mate. It's over for you." I had the E-League job round the corner. People saying, "You're probably not going to get that E-League job now. You should just reassess your life." All right, then I'll just reassess it. I'll fucking reassess it with a noose. But, you know, everyone joined the dog pile. No one gave a fuck. No one wanted to ask if I was okay. Obviously, my friends did. No one gave a shit. So if you ever want to know how fucking dark it gets, to go from being, you know, sort of lauded and applauded to being absolutely despised and lied about and having no control over the messaging and where you are, why the fuck would anyone sign up for that? Henry, by the way, has done multiple successful projects. And listen, you know my views on NFTs. I've publicly said it many times, but you know, Henry got the bag. Henry understands that world. Henry believes it can be a force for good. I don't share those views, but he's my friend. He's like fucking family to me. He's like blood. What am I gonna do? Sit there and just fucking be negative about everything he tries to do? No, I don't do that. Right. So here's the reality. He's never coming back. No one would. No one would. I say it all the time, and I hope people, you know, from listening to me talk about it, get a window into this. You have to be sick. You have to be literally ill to want to do this. I can't even explain the reasons anymore. It's like some fucked up sunken cost fallacy. I have to reinvent my reality every day to justify doing what I'm doing. I know it's not healthy. It's not mentally healthy. It's not physically healthy. I have to set myself little milestones, like win another award. Like, by the way, there are people out there who can only fucking dream of that being a fucking milestone that you set yourself. I'm having to do that to justify being here in the fucking first place. It's unreal. So, yeah, is he coming back? No. And as a friend, I would tell him never to do that.
No,
Never
way
to
better
do
place
that.
now. Way
Yeah,
better
fuck
place.
it. The best advice you'll ever get about esports is like it's a smash and grab. All the people who treat it the way that me and Duncan criticize it, they're the smart ones. If you stick around there, it will just poison you. It will pollute your mind. And it gets worse with each generation and each new bit of tech and each new window into which people can fuck you. Guys, no one's having a good time in esports.
It's why I get so
no one.
triggered by all the mental health messaging,
Mm.
because it is so fucking fake. It's fake. The same cunt who gives money to the charity, retweets it and even tweets that, then turns around and goes, because Richard Lewis and Thorin, aren't they like associated with right nationalism? And like, you're the fucking cunt causing the mental health crisis.
Yeah.
We
No,
were just trying to play video games. That's why, if people don't get it, the reason why when people watch those old episodes, I joked about it on the fucking Four Horsemen. You know when people watch those prime numbers episodes and they go, "Wow, they were so much more lighthearted and fun." If people don't know, the reason I used to be the king of Twitter is because I never used to read the replies, but I didn't care what people said. I was like, whatever, they can say whatever they want. Fine, I'll tell my opinion. They have theirs. That's because people weren't en masse trying to get me fired from my job every single day. They weren't trying to constantly bring up one tweet from 8 years ago and keep retweeting it every fucking day. They weren't like a very famous influencer in CSGO who would constantly retweet the tweet where I said I have autism after every single incident I ever had as a way to publicly mock me for that. And he is beloved by pro players to this day, interacting with this fucking cunt. And I have to just take that and then go. And if I ever for 1 second do it, 4 angry tweets, I'm having a meltdown and I'm mentally ill and I should get off the internet. And this proved everyone right who ever doubted me in any context, and I am a piece of shit. Not even, by the way, a person I don't like, someone I think is bad at his job, a rude person, a piece of shit.
Yeah. I mean, dude, I like I say, when I published this simple article, bro, it's so fucking outrageous. The comments like about this guy who's now like essentially our ambassador for the game moving
Just
forward.
like from the old days when people were like wanting him out and that.
Yeah, when he had his stuff, and basically,
it,
if we'd followed the desires of those people, the timeline we'd be in now would be just outrageous. It's like, you know, fuck this. It's just a garbage business, unfortunately.
I agree.
People that gravitate towards it are just fucking. They don't want to build anything. They just want to tear shit down. So whatever. Fuck them. Stay out, Henry. Right, Watch Doge. Is the golden rule do unto others what has been done to me? Funnily enough, it ties in with what we're just talking about. I mean, no, I always do. I went through a period, like, it's kind of hard. There's no way to be kind of like morally consistent on this particular issue, because one of the things I've noticed in the modern wasteland, the no man's land battlefield of social media, unfortunately, what you have to do is you have to use the fucking tools of your destructors and your oppressors, or whatever the fuck you want to call it, your haters. You have to use their tool. You have to use their weapons against them every time. It's the only way to survive. It ties in with what we're talking about now. Me and Duncan are fundamentally against the concept of you tweeted something bad 10 years ago.
Absolutely.
Right? So now your life is over now in the present. But here's the thing. Those people won't give you any quarter. So the first thing you have to do is, when these motherfuckers come at you, is do the advanced Twitter search, archive everything they've done and said. And then I always frame it like this. I ask them a question. Do you like cancel culture? And they'll, oh, what's happening to you, Richard? Do you like cancel culture? And if they don't say no, then I say, well, what about this? And then what about this? And what about this? And put it this way, there are people out there who are enjoying careers essentially by the good grace of people like me and Duncan not highlighting things they've done and said. Like, it's that simple. And so we've stayed our hand in multiple, but no one will ever show us. No one will ever show mercy to us. But the fundamental problem you've got with that is that, like, where possible, it is one of the worst elements of like toxic internet culture or whatever you want to call it now is the idea that if you've ever done anything wrong, you deserve what is done to you now. And so
it's like you essentially, if people don't know, every new person and even the same person gets to put you in a Sisyphean nightmare where you have to again be judged, found guilty, and punished again. And it can never end. And even an apology isn't enough, by the way. You must apologize every single time. It becomes like some sort of fucked up, like Kafka nightmare, doesn't it?
Yeah. And so, where possible, the best course of action is if you acknowledge that something is bad and has, like, again, malignant tendencies, you don't engage in that same behavior. But the issue you got, it's a fucking fight for survival. Yes. People will keep coming at you unless you fucking show your claws, and they realize that they're poking a bear. So is it the golden rule? It shouldn't be, but what's like in the Game of Thrones, you either win or you fucking die, unfortunately. That's what we've turned the internet into. Yes. So yeah, it's fucked up.
Yeah, the key thing for me is this. I'm sort of with you. Like, as a general principle, for example, I don't believe in, like, cancel culture. I don't believe in, like, you did this 7 years ago, whatever. But the problem I have is this. I do think you can draw a distinction which goes like this. The reason I'm not actually doing to the other person what they did to me is they did it apropos of nothing, Richard. They just woke up one day as a fucked up person and went, I'm going to see if I can destroy this person's life. Remember, 99% of cases, they weren't even the person insulted by the joke. They weren't even there. They weren't even an affected party. But they're talking as though they're like the dad of a dead kid or something that you murdered and they need answers. And not only that, you have to answer to them because they're calling you out on Twitter. It's even call out culture, right? And so my problem goes like this. Because they've done it for no reason. Or if you're going to do that and you're going to actively, maliciously come after my life and your whole take was, I said something 8 years ago, you better fucking hope that I don't find anything on your Twitter from 8 years and before, because otherwise you're fucking toast, mate. Because I'm going to go out of my way to show you what that behavior is like. I'll give you the best example right now. Fans don't get it because fans are stupid and half of them were never there in the first place, right? If people don't know, I was literally fired from my dream job at On Gamers because someone who was a nutter managed to get through enough of a corporate chain that they got really high up, way above the company that I was working at, and they got to an executive and said, one of the employees of a company below your company is basically like making fun of disabled people by calling someone a retard, right? If you go back, it was a literal joke, and the joke was even half about a player and half about a champion in the game, a character, right? TSM fans had me fired by doing this, right? Fired from my dream job. The job that, by the way, was paying all my money. It was the one job I had. This wasn't when I was independent. This was my one salary in the world. They took my whole livelihood away from me, and I went freelance after that. Now, that happened, Richard, in 2014. In 2012, Reginald, the owner of TSM, same organization, did a video, a vlog on his channel on YouTube, which existed, as they all did, until 2020, when I publicized it. And in it, he said a very famous word that a lot of people will consider a gay slur in the modern day. Now, TSM fans tell me, but there was a different context around the words back then, and the internet was different back then. It would be unfair of us to hold that against him, right? In that scenario, Richard, I almost feel like you're not even being petty. You're just actually showing them what this behavior leads to. You're actually just essentially like, they sort of have to earn the hard way, unfortunately. Like, that's why I agree with you. I find it a very tricky topic because I never go all the way into it. And like I say, I have sort of my own lines in the sand where I'll go up to and not beyond. Like, if you notice, I try to only do it to what they did in the case of, like, they did it with no reason. I'm just showing them, right, well, I'll use your motivation to turn it on you. But I have to say, I'm a little bit torn about it. I know the one that we're definitely in agreement on is, like, on the one hand, I do think almost nobody key phrase. Almost nobody deserves to be quote tweeted by someone else who is famous, doesn't have much overlap with them. All you get is what I got at the end of last year, the beginning of this year. You get literally tens of thousands of people who don't know you and just decide you're the target of the day and just send you a horrible message. There's nothing good comes from it. There's no learning, by the way. There's nothing to learn. These people don't know you and they hate you for something you aren't. But the problem is, again, if someone who is a small journalist fucks with me and lies, like there was one that works for esports that said that I had blackmailed my friend. They were just speculating about this publicly. Said that I had blackmailed my friend into silence. So guess what? I'm going to fucking put you on I'm going to show you the spotlight. I'm going to bring a stool out on stage, stand you on top and put a spotlight and put a mic in front of you and go, there you go. Tell the whole crowd what you want to tell about me blackmailing someone. Why did you say that? Like in that scenario, Richard, I agree, it's fucked up, and I know on some level I am causing them trauma. But in a weird way, it is also, I do believe, this is what's interesting. Unlike their opinion, this is a consequence of their actions on some level, I believe. Someone eventually was going to have to come and show them what it's like to have that done to you. Because you notice they always frame it one way, that it's always righteous and that they're never going to be on the other side of it. And the spoiler is you can all be on the other side of it. That's the dumbest thing about this game. It is a fucking race to the bottom. No one's going to be found innocent. Everyone's going to have done something, said so. It's just stupid. The whole thing's stupid.
Oh, it is, definitely. Rekovic says, what activities would you recommend for someone in COVID isolation? I mean, it depends. Are you stuck in a hotel? Because obviously that's the one that breaks everybody.
Yeah, get out and about's probably a good one. Go to parks, countryside.
Yeah. If you can do that, but if you're literally boxed in, I don't know, man. Good book. You know, I don't know. I mean,
I've got an obvious one for you. If you, as long as you haven't watched them recently, just get the extended edition of the 3 Lord of the Rings movies. There's 12 hours right there. And by the way, you will enjoy all 12 hours. It's banging. It's mega rewatchability on that.
Me and Sam just did that.
It's a shit, isn't it?
Yeah. Oh, it is good. You can't go wrong with that. Last time I saw Sam.
So there's an easy 12 hours you just burned off right there.
Yeah, did all Lord of the Rings. But I mean, yeah, there's like a ton of good. I mean, like at the end of the day, the way TV series come out, there's like a ton of good TV series you can get lost into. Put it this way, there's bound to be something mega you've not watched. Maybe you've not watched The Sopranos all the way through or whatever. And it's like, trust me.
Yeah, go back to a classic show you've never gotten into. You'll be able to
marathon that. Exactly. There's a ton of like, I mean, like Deadwood's the one that not a lot of people
No one's seen that.
That is 3 seasons of just mega TV.
And the main actor.
Oh, yeah. Fucking just straight fucking fire. Just watch that.
A god among men.
Oh, absolutely. Shine.
And by the way, that isn't no pussy show. That's a show that show goes hard as fuck. If you think this is going to be like, it's an American TV show, and there's a reason this show didn't last long enough. It was too hardcore. It was.
I remember when it first came out, Deadwood, actually. I remember when it first came out. And I was like, I didn't watch it because, at the time, so I didn't watch it live because it was on Sky Atlantic or whatever the fuck it was called back then, you know. And basically, like, Ian McShane was in fucking Lovejoy. Which was like this, like Boone or just some throwaway garbage TV series about an antique steal, and I was like, "What? He's the main character." Like, I was just like, "It's gonna be shit." But then, like, somebody said to me, like, "Oh, that Deadwood's fucking mega. You got it." So, like, basically after as the first season ended, I went back and watched it. I was like, fucking hell. This is like one of the best things that's ever been on TV. It's also
got a way deeper cast than you're going to realise because a lot of people went on to do more things. But if you've ever watched American TV and movies, you're going to recognise almost every fucking person in the cast.
Yeah, totally. So, yeah, Deadwood. First sock. Oh, sorry, no, Shine. What character from a book, movie, or TV series do you think best represents you? That's hard. You've got the whole span of...
I mean, the funny thing is, I've made this point in the past, but like, I never picked the name for it in any way to do with like, I fuck with the character. I just picked it as a random name on a Quake server one day, but people did point out that there are all like really weird parallels between me and that character. Like even the whole thing that as a joke, I made my whole thing about getting Skrill. I actually didn't even intend that to be like related to like the character. Yeah, but did go mad with dragon sickness and all. Yeah, there's all that fucking shit that ties in. And the problem is, if I had to pick someone, like, the problem is, right, here's the thing, because I don't let a lot of my personal side out, it'll seem jarring to you because you're all... Sadly, people really believe I was like born coming out the womb, like fucking making jokes and all this shit. Like, I'm a different person. So basically, this will sound weird, but I'll give you a character I relate to really heavily, which is if you've ever seen the movie Gattaca, it's the main character played by Ethan Hawke in that movie. Yeah, that's basically who I am in my career. You just don't know it because I did jokes, which makes me an evil person and a piece of shit, I've learned.
For me... It's like it's so mad difficult to like just pick one person from.
Obvious one feels like someone like Hunter S. Thompson.
Yeah, but the problem,
these feel like people you vibe with, right?
yeah, I mean, I do vibe. The problem I got with that is obviously, I mean, first of all, they were like sort of like, you know, real people, even though they did insert themselves into their work.
I mean, Varys from Game of Thrones ain't a bad shout.
Yeah,
Because what I always liked about that was the angle that, look, it's true actually in the books he doesn't necessarily purely serve the realm, but like the show version that was just about the idea that you have complex relationships, but because your ultimate goal is that like everything sort of remains good. That's been kind of your approach to esports, I feel like.
Yeah, I mean, and that's why, you know, the strange bedfellows a lot of the time. I think people don't realize that, you know, that there are people who like probably should impugn me publicly, but actually privately, you know, we're pretty tight.
Yeah.
And because it has to be that way. You know, what's that saying about, you know, it takes fucking 100 people. What, like, it takes a village to raise a child.
Yes, there you go.
That's what I meant. First off, what do you think of prog rock as a genre? Do you have any bands you like? It's one of those genres that I can recognize the artistry that goes into it, and how like complicated it is, and how mega the songwriting is. And, you know, I like the idea of like long songs that have multiple components and are assembled almost like classical music. But do I actually listen to it? Do I fuck? So, you know, it's like one of those. It's like classical music. I can listen to a piece of classical music and really appreciate it. But will I go out of my way to listen to it? No, I will listen to the genres I vibe with the most, which are primarily, you know, breakbeat, hip hop, and metal. So that's
thing is,
I'm
prog rock, unironically, is one of my favorite genres. I will say it's one of the hardest to get into, not least because in Britain, at least, it's very much like a class-based thing. Like that's like a very much like a middle-class type of music that people from like sort of like very nerdy backgrounds are into. And obviously it's a bit outdated at this point in time because, spoiler, the classic period for prog rock was the fucking 1970s. It's now 2022. So with that said, the problem this genre has is, one, by definition, it's the hardest to get into because the songs are like 9 minutes long and they're all like incredibly like high musician level, and they're concept albums, super long composition. You're not going to get what you get from pop, essentially. You're not going to, in fact, I actually think, by the way, as a small aside, it's where you Zoomers are fucked. Because if you don't like a song the first listen, you give up. Well, guess what? Some of my greatest artists of all time I'd never be into if that was the case. Or if I just gave up on the first try because I didn't like that hit song. Sometimes you have to go, it takes like 10 years before you go back to an album and you're like, actually, that's the shit. Why wasn't I into this? Because you weren't the same person. So within the genre, look, obviously loads of the classics I like. Fucking Pink Floyd, King Crimson's probably my favorite.
Yeah, I really do like Pink Floyd, though. That's fair.
Yeah,
I mean,
they're probably the most easy crossover one.
Yeah, they're entry
level. You're going to know their shit. Yeah. But then the problem with this genre is, look, I can give you a couple. Like, for example, I like almost everything a guy called Alan Holdsworth did. He was just a mega guitarist, like a jazz star. Because that is fucking unbelievable. His albums are mega. Let me think. If you want like a few more obscure ones, like modern day ones, there was an indie band called like Children of Nova that was pretty interesting. They did some sort of like, it was like a better version of Coheed and Cambria, if you know that band. A way better version, really. Let me think. What else? Oh, obvious Rush. I like nearly everything Rush ever did through their whole careers. Solid 40, 50 years of shit there for you if you like that. And then the problem you have with prog rock is this. It's the good news and it's the bad news. Here's the good news. You have to train your YouTube algorithm. Because if you train your YouTube algorithm by watching loads of videos in this genre, it is the genre where in the 1970s, it's like soul music, dude. There are a million LPs you've never heard of that are just in some rack somewhere. And people have put them on YouTube now, though. There's like obscure accounts that just have like, 50 like French prog rock albums from 1978 or something. So it'll be shit you'd never find otherwise. But if you want to just like have a grab bag, like random attempt, you'll find some like absolute gems in there where you'll be like, holy fuck, this is so good. But it's going to be so niche, you'll never have heard of it. So I can't even tell you the names. Like, it's just shit on a playlist somewhere. But you can find it out there. There's a lot of stuff. There's a lot of stuff in that genre. In fact, one thing that's cool, I think, about that genre is because so much of it was from the 1970s. Here's the best part of the 1970s. People hadn't got yet so that they got the hundreds of millions of dollars. So if you were an actual musician like Led Zeppelin, you just do an album every year for the tour. So it means that people put out amazing bodies of work in like 10, 20 years. Then you come to the modern day and you have some cunts like Tool where they take 16 years to do the next album. Like, that's bullshit, mate. Come on. Like, I want these bands where they bang out like 10 albums in fucking 12 years and you're a legend, So that's one thing I like about that genre, basically.
Yeah. Yeah, like I say, I mean, yeah, thinking about it, I could look into some of that. I did fuck with, obviously everyone fucks with Pink Floyd. Although the problem I always had is that, like I said, there was that one cunt at university that would just come in and put the
There you
entire
go.
fucking, Dark Side of the Moon
There you go.
or The Wall, just put the entire album on.
It's why I said,
for
like,
£1 in the jukebox.
it's why I said the Zoomers, especially not from the UK, won't get it. Because, like, I'll give you another example. The bands when I was a student at college, which is 16 to 18-year-olds, if you're American, by the way. When I was at college, here were the bands that you would never listen to just because of who listens to them. The Smiths, Radiohead. Like, these are all wankers. Everyone who liked those bands is a tosser. So the problem is, initially, you don't look into it. But when you actually look into it, there's some mega bands, believe it or not. Like, that's the best shit ever, isn't it?
Yeah,
at the time, I would have looked at Henry G and gone, "Wow, it seems like a bit of a."
I was very, I was very anti Radiohead and Cure when I was growing up, and then it's like you say, went back and sort of revisited it because it was like I'm having a contrarian stance, and you're like, "Fucking hell!"
Oh, it's a shit.
So, yeah, it's like a treasure trove,
Yeah, it's mega, isn't it?
Right, two more. Zumba says, "Who will be better out of the Israeli CS players?" Sphinx or Flames?
Ooh, it's a tough call.
One.
I feel like
really
at the
tough.
moment I would probably go with Sphinx for Ents. Like Flames looks like he also has a lot of talent, but I feel like he's a lot more hit and miss. The Sphinx guy, when I watch him, he's nearly always really good. He actually looks for real, like they've just fucking stumbled on, found money with that player. Don't know how he's ended up in Ents, but fair play to him. Fair play.
Yeah, I mean, and look, I mean, one of the things we'll talk about when we actually talk about Pro League on the next episode is, like Ents, by the way, there's been this backdrop where Ents have been doing sort of surprisingly well, of late, and he's been a big part of that. So that's definitely an issue. But Flames as well. He was like a bit more heavily touted, I want to say.
Oh, he was mega hyped initially, yeah.
Yeah, like people were saying this guy was like ready.
He was supposed to be the last piece that made OG become like the real team that could win and shit,
But am I right in saying he's the younger of the two?
I feel like he almost has to be. I think he's very young.
Flames is 18, right?
Have a look. I would guess Sphinx is a year or two older, but let me see.
Yeah.
Sphinx is 21, yes.
Yeah, and Flames is 18, 19. So, I mean, there is that aspect to it. The OG project does seem to have stalled a little bit as well.
Agreed.
I know they had that little honeymoon period with Nexa, but, I don't know. That's a really hard question. It's a really hard question. Obviously, like coming out Katowice, like OG got fucking murked there, so I don't really know. It's very hard to say. Probably as things stand in the current game state, it's probably Sphinx is on course, I would say. But maybe that's apples and
They
oranges.
both got a lot of potential.
Yeah.
I think they could both be somewhere in a year or two.
For sure. An Echo, why did the dinosaurs have to go extinct? I missed them so much. If we never coexisted, Duncan, like in the cartoons, I don't think you'll be missing them.
No, exactly. I know.
But
you saw Jurassic Park. Wasn't really that great when they came back to life.
No, definitely not. So there you go. That is the show. A long one today and a melancholy one, but that's just the nature of esports. Maybe it'll be more upbeat next week. Maybe not. Who knows? Let's give a shout out to the sponsors. Our VPN sponsor, go to nordvpn.com/RLS to take advantage of 74%. I think it is currently discount. Sign up. They're great and support all of my content, including my live streams and my audio podcast, The Esports Gospel, which is available on Spotify. And of course, midnight.com, our new sponsor, betting sponsor. If you go to midnight.com, you sign up using R. Lewis. Definitely use the code. You get to take advantage of a free £20 if you deposit £20 for the purposes of betting on their site. And they're just another great company. Loads of cool people work there, including some old esports veterans. So I like to support them on that basis. So great to have a partnership with them. And of course, our patrons. $100 patron, Carve, Cathal, Cred, Jerky's Minion, Marcus Kumpar, Michael Hewitt, Tobias Bernasconi, and Will the Weed Wrangler. And our $50 patrons, Adam Ox, Alex C, Arammer, Benakagi, Bren, BP420, Kenneth Pasito, CMAC 1991, Echo, First Sock, Gerhan Kaya, Detlef Insomniac, Miss Alcoholic, Nolan, Otarian, Reykjavik on Steam, Sard Sawar, Samuel Hotama, Satan, SLNXC, the Bitcoin Cash Podcast, Tim Frost, Lonnie, TRL, Watchdog, Zumba, and Zarathenia. That was By the Numbers. And we'll see you sometime soon. Don't know when, but until then, take care of yourself.